This is Use Your Items, a podcast about the philosophy and design of video games. Fran, let us defy destiny together.
Jason, what do you want?
I really wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. I could not bring myself. I was like, I just have to jump scare him with this.
Mission accomplished. I was like, oh my God, why are we so serious about the Final Fantasy VII Remake?
Intergrade
without intermission. Sorry, I didn't get to it. My B.
I also didn't play Intermission. However, today we are talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. I played it on Steam. Fran played it on the PlayStation 4.
And on Steam, I played it once on PS4, again on PS4 in hard mode, then again on PS4 hard mode 99%. I got all the way up to the one optional final boss. And I was like, I'm not feeling like grinding out how to beat this final boss. I'm good. And then I played it once again for this podcast on the how's it called, on
easy mode head start.
No, normal mode, normal non-classic head start.
Gotcha.
So and for those, we will get into all those things because it has actually some interesting stuff from an accessibility standpoint. How about you, Jason?
Yep. So I played it on Steam. I played it over the course of about 2.5 weeks, I'd say. I really honestly binged it for the last 3 days or so. It was a bit grueling at times. Just the rate at which I did it. That was my schedule, not the game.
Mm-hmm. It is not a bingeable game, definitely.
It's really not. There's definitely some pacing issues, and that's probably. I'll just start at the top, which is my biggest issues with the game is the pacing. But I think that's kind of to be expected with a game where they're taking essentially the first disc.
Yes.
More or less, and then spinning it out into its own 30-hour game.
It's, I believe, if I recall correctly, the like most people's agreed upon the Midgar section is around 7 to 8 hours, and they've extended it to 30 hours. And
to various effects.
I think to some effects are very, very good. Like there are some parts where I like, this is additional content that I'm here for, and this is amazing. And there's some additional content where I'm like, okay, we don't really need it. We didn't really need this. This would have been good as a side story or as an optional area, but we will be getting into it. But before we get into that, do you want to hit us with the behind the box?
You know what? I think I do. I think I really do. Let me pull that bad boy up and see what we got going on here. All right. Behind the box. Oh, these are your notes. That's not going to help me.
Don't read my notes. How dare you? My secret notes.
It's not real. I'm just going to cut all this. Maybe. We'll see. I'll decide. It depends on how lazy I'm feeling. The legend returns for all generations. What begins as a rebellion against an evil corporation becomes much more. And what erupts goes beyond imagination. The story of this first standalone game in the Final Fantasy VII Remake project covers up to the party's escape from Midgar and goes deeper into the event occurring in the city than the original Final Fantasy VII. That is an awful behind the box.
Yes,
wow.
I agree.
That's atrocious.
I read this, and this is literally the behind the box. I was kind of going back and forth between should I do the PS4 behind the box or the Steam description. I decided to go with what was original. This is the PS4 physical on the box. This is what they put on there. And I do agree with you that this is not that good, but it does lead me to a little bit of a let's set the groundwork for this podcast and stuff like that. I think that for me, for this spoiler-free section, I am willing to talk about Final Fantasy VII, spoil Final Fantasy VII. Like we are not going to talk about anything that this game might do differently than Final Fantasy VII proper, that will be for the spoiler section. But I'm okay with, if you haven't played Final Fantasy VII, then this game might not be 100% for you. We will get more into that, because I agree that this is bad behind the box because of that idea that this game is for all generations. Okay. And that is a very difficult thing. Like, wait, isn't this game like a remake? Shouldn't it be for everybody? Well, dear listener, as we talk through this, you might question that idea.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm fine agreeing to those terms. So in this spoiler-free for Final Fantasy VII Remake section of the podcast, which typically runs about an hour, we'll see, we will agree that we will spoil nothing else from this game that we played for this episode. However, anything that does occur in the original PS1 game is fair game. And that goes the same for you listeners. So please be advised, we do have very special, our very first episode actually ever was on Final Fantasy VII, so that is why we are bringing this back. It is our year anniversary. I can't believe it took us this long to say so. It's not exactly 1 year, but it's spiritually and thematically a year anniversary episode. So we've been doing this for a little over 12 months. And yeah, so that is our agreement. I will stick to it. And I think I would mostly just agree that I'm not really crazy about this behind the box, in the sense that it does seem like anybody can play it, and yet in the same paragraph or the next line, the next sentence, it's 3 sentences, it's really just calling to the people who know what Final Fantasy VII is.
Yes.
So to me, it is a question of audience, where is this really, did Nomura make this for the diehard Final Fantasy VII fans, or is this a game for anybody who's interested in Final Fantasy VII or is into anime or just any sort of, or like the whole Final Fantasy aesthetic?
Yeah. And that is going to be a huge, I think that's going to be like a thematic through line throughout this whole idea, because it's certainly my take. It is probably, it's definitely going to be, I'm very interested in what you have to say, because this is definitely, this is probably our first time working through a remake. I don't count Metroid Prime, just because that was truly just a remaster. Like, I can't think of, there's not many actually true remakes. We've decided to, like, from the ground up, recode everything and redesign and re-artify and re-musicify and everything, the whole game. And this game is probably our first time approaching this type of game.
I mean, even from this happens in, I think, the 3rd chapter. So within 3 chapters, this game is delineating itself from the original game on a narrative sense as well. So it's truly unique in the sense that it is a reimagining in some ways, in many ways, from the original Final Fantasy VII Disc 1, we'll call it. And I don't know, there's some pretty cool stuff going on here. I think we should jump in. I want to really get to the meat of it and start talking about it. Do you want to go over your personal history with this remake?
Oh, I've hit
right into it.
I've already hit in the personal history. Just played it like 3 times already.
Okay.
Love Final Fantasy VII. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And this one, if you look at my backlogged, I have Final Fantasy VII as a 4-star recommendation. So again, my backlogged is more of a recommendation scale, not really a quality scale. And I have it at 4 out of 5 stars, and I have Final Fantasy Remake at 3 out of 5 star, which is a depends recommendation, like a very caveated recommendation. Final Fantasy VII is a full recommendation. Maybe you could put the smallest bit of caveat of the graphics are super dated, so it's going to be a bit difficult to go through if that's something that affects you, but otherwise, good game.
Cool. So my personal history is not, I mean, honestly, is similar to what I said on the very first episode of the show, is that I had a lot of tangential references to 7 that kind of infected my psyche and planted all these brain worms to me about what Final Fantasy VII is. And the same actually is I think interestingly enough true of Final Fantasy VII Remake, where I had a lot of brainworms planted into my head, especially considering we're recording this in 2025. And just last year, in 2024, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, the second in the series of this game, of the Final Fantasy VII Remake project, the second game in that series, released last year and won a ton of accolades. It was well loved. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. I guess it's kind of covering the second disc. I'm not too sure about that.
I
did not
have
look
no
into
idea.
it.
I have been able to have no, I have had no spoilers for Rebirth, and I tend to keep it that way.
Yeah, the only thing I had spoiled for me from that game is stuff that I already knew happened from the original.
Gotcha.
Like the Golden Saucer, which is
Gotcha.
pretty... That's not a surprise to anybody, I don't think. I kind of had a lot of brainworms and a lot of different ideas that don't necessarily line up with the reality of playing the game. But for the most part, I love Final Fantasies and I love Final Fantasy VII. And that is where I'm going to kind of leave it here. I thoroughly enjoyed my time with this game.
Awesome.
And that's most of my personal history. So
I'm happy that you thoroughly enjoyed your time with this game.
yeah, I thoroughly unenjoyed my time with this game too. It kind of went hand in hand. And I want to jump right into it with not necessarily my gripes, but with some of the friction I felt. And it's going to, of course, come back to the ATB system because this is the quintessential through line from the original game to here is that we still have ATB. It is a mostly defunct system in Final Fantasy games where we've mostly moved past it. In fact, Final Fantasy 16, which came out 2 years ago now. And that game is way more Devil May Cry, way more action, less RPG. It's a lot more fluid, and it's a big focus on just fast-paced, frenetic, twitchy action. And what I think they do here is pretty incredible because it feels so much like the original ATB gauge from the original game, and they've co-opted it here by allowing you to build it through basic attacks and blocking and heavy attacks and blocking and stuff like that, which is genius, I think.
I think this is probably the best marriage of turn-based tactics and action-based tactics that I've seen in any game, period, that I've played. Maybe there's other ones out there that exist that are really good. You take your stuff like Kingdom Hearts, and that's a very action-centric, but let's be honest, almost nobody goes through the menus. You have your 4 spells that are on your shortcuts, and those are all the spells that you'll ever use. You will never look at that menu at the bottom left.
Pretty rare.
You have your Ni no Kuni's, Wrath of the White Witch, where they do like turn-based.
Deep cut.
Yeah, where they do like turn-based, but you need to like move around while selecting stuff in your menu. And it's just, in my opinion, I did not like it that much. It was just too, the marriage wasn't there. What they've been playing, Square Enix has been playing with this for so long that they have been able to have so many iterations of this like action RPG with turn-based tactics attached to it. And I think they finally hit it here. Final Fantasy VII Remake is so juicy and good. Every time you go into like your menus and it goes into slow motion and it goes like, it's a true 100% slow motion that if you just got hit, you can see the character's face like grunting in pain in slow motion as it's going. If you're about to do a slice, you can go like, you're look like, oh, this is gonna be so good. I'm just about to like do this and that. Switching between characters, how the camera moves between them is so dynamic, and all these different things. It's just it's beautiful. Love it. How the design pushes you towards playing as characters by making the ATB meter of the character you're playing go faster than the ATBs of your separate characters. So that way you like move between characters often. I feel like this game, yes, it is only 8 hours of the original game, but I understand from there's so much design work that went into this game. It's crazy. And this is only with 3 characters, which is why, it's only with 4 characters. your team is composed of 3 characters. There's 4 playable characters, and the game decides for you, honestly, which ones you should have, which one you'll have in a certain scenario.
Yeah, you never have an option to change out your party.
Yeah, except in like the virtual missions and stuff like that, like side quest stuff and all those things. And they did such a good job at making every like pairing of groups feel good enough by themselves. I'm very curious how they're going to be able to continue this on once you have 9 characters and you're trying to like balance all these characters together. But at the same time, it might be something that they may be like, you know what? We don't want to balance this. This is just vibes. Be powerful. Be OP. You choose which characters you want to play as, because you can choose whatever you want.
I wonder if we're going to even get to play as all the characters, or if they're all going to
as well
enter the party. Without getting into spoilers for this game, and I won't. On the ATB gauge, and that the dynamics of combat, this experience of, you know, you're fighting a were-rat and or fighting 3 were-rats, and it's you and Tifa and Barrett, Cloud, Tifa, and Barrett, and you have to swap between them to build the ATB gauge so you can cast stuff. My experience was I really didn't want to swap between characters. I would get so locked into the flow of I'm Cloud, I'm Barrett, I'm Tifa, I'm Eric. Like, I'm in like my flow state, playing as this character, building the gauge, casting a buff, using my special attack, and then layering on stuff when the other ATB gauges came up, that I really felt like I didn't ever want to swap. And I think it was certainly to my detriment, because I feel like the actual experience is mostly to be on a character, build their gauge, do something, swap, and then do something with somebody else so that you can min-max what you've built each character to do. But I feel like almost it, like the action RPG-ness of it all made me really want to like through line or main line on a single character during play. So there was a little bit of friction and tension with me there. I felt that it's just so amazing to be in the midst of it, and it's something that I really took for granted, of like, I'm swapping cameras and characters and play styles, and it is so deeply unique that I started to take it for granted, which I think is a sign of a really seamless system.
Just the fact that it is, each character has their own battle system, essentially, right? Like, you have Tifa, who is literally a Street Fighter character, and you just go to town with that character. You have Barrett, who is a little bit more, it's weird because they have you can decide either he's the tank and you put him front line, or he's the back line because he has a far away weapon, right? And you can choose and pick, like, oh, what do I want to do with this character? You have these spells that I think that maybe I have a bit of a different view of it, because I played the hard mode afterwards, and in the hard mode, there are certain things that the game, like, you have to be doing this, because otherwise you will not be able to beat the game. Hard mode, for listeners, its opponents are have more HP, damage, and all that stuff. You're not allowed to use healing items or healing spells outside of battle. So you are like, fighting is the cure. It's like, it's crazy. Right. It's amazing. So chakra becomes super important. Arcane ward becomes super important on Aerith, which arcane ward is an ability that Aerith has that's no MP, just puts a circle flower underneath you, and any spell you cast within that circle gets cast twice. Holy, that is like a necessity in hard mode. It's crazy. I love it.
It's a very strong. That whole ability felt very Final Fantasy XIV inspired. I really appreciated that. It just felt like I was in FF14 again as my black mage, and I have to like stand and deliver my spells. I was impressed. I was still able to run back my Cloud as a solo mage build from my playthrough as Cloud in Final Fantasy VII, the original. And on that game design, like, materia somehow feels better than it ever did in the original. And that was one of my favorite parts of the original game. And to their credit, they've really managed to capture every single thing that was good about the original and just make it simply better. And then take a lot of the cruft, take a lot of the sharp edges, literally sometimes with those polygons, and just make it so much better, or reimagine it, while still keeping a lot of the spirit of the original game.
Yeah.
I don't think I really have too much negative besides what I already leaned on. I think there is a bit of a enemy, like an enemy. What do you call it? I can't think of the word. Like
Variety or
yes, there is an enemy variety issue where I feel like I have fought so many were-rats and Sahagin, and I just don't want to do it anymore. And it's just like part of this game being a 30-hour experience to me is that it's really not just narrative that they're building on, and there's a lot of cool narrative things that they did build on. But then there's a lot of what I disliked about Final Fantasy XVI, which is a lot of side quests where we are chasing down and killing the same monsters, or this monster is now immune to this, or it's a cobalt drake instead of a wind drake or a lesser drake, and they're much harder to kill, but it's like there's some nuance there where it's building on the battle experience, which I appreciate. And then there's times where it's like you have to fight 3 Type B mono drives, and that fight's just not fun because there's no way to tell which one's immune to physical and which one's immune to magic without hitting them. And you've wasted an ATB gauge likely. I don't need to get into the specifics of it, but there is an enemy variety issue where it just feels like I'm like, if you really, really love being in combat, I think there's no issue and you're just happy to be there. And this was my exact experience with Nier, right? Where another game where there was a big issue with enemy variety. But I loved being in combat in that game. So I didn't care if I had to fight the same stupid, like, flying robot at the 30th time.
That's interesting. You bring up Nier because I don't think I really enjoyed being in combat in Nier as much as I enjoyed being in combat in this game. But the reason why I was okay essentially with the enemy variety of Nier was because part of the thematic through line of that game is the pacifism of a lot of the robots and just being able to walk past them. And I never really felt a need to grind out my level really in that game. So that's why I felt like in that game that I feel like that game has worse enemy variety than this game.
It absolutely does.
It just is from a perspective of I don't need to fight everything in that game. While in this game, there are certain areas that unfortunately, you need to fight something to move on. And it is the third time you've seen this thing. And it's like, okay, this is a bit annoying. I wonder how much of that is more enemy variety and how much of that is actually odd job or side quest variety. Because I would argue almost that at least, so this run through that I did no side quests. It took me 18 hours to beat the game. Granted, I was a head start, which starts you out at level 45. So obviously, first few combats are like one hit KO until like halfway.
That is a higher level than I finished my run on normal.
There's a cap of 50, and you start at 45.
Unbelievable.
Yes.
That's wild. Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No.
I just had to throw it out there.
It is. I kind of wish it was a slider because I thought when I read Head Start, I was like, oh, okay, it'll just give me some potions, some materia to start out. I wanted to try out a different playthrough. I didn't want to redo the same playthrough that I had done a few times already. And then the fact that it hits level 45 so quickly, it was a bit like. It was definitely I do not care much about playing this game. I want more of the story. It was like a story mode, essentially, or story difficulty. Like a lot of games have like narrative difficulty or story difficulty below easy, which is just you don't care really much about combat or anything like that. You just want to hear the story. So this is for you. And so having played it this way, where I was like 100%, I will not do any odd jobs. I felt like the enemy variety was not an issue. I felt like I only saw were-rats like 3 or 4 times, 3 or 4 combats, and that was it. Like it was definitely a different play experience for me because I imagine the game very, very much. The game is unfortunately proud of the odd job system, which asking you to do so many of them, and honestly, you don't need to do any of them. You can skip all of them.
Right. I in my playthrough, I did every side quest I could find up until the penultimate moment where there's no more side quests.
Yep.
So I didn't finish all the side quests in that ultimate moment of there's no more side quests after this, basically.
Yeah.
The game is very explicit in this, which I can appreciate it.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for like a near you missed it, and then there's a time and a place for we made all this content, please for the love of God play it. You can't play it anymore if you progress past this point.
I kind of dislike that a little bit though, because after you finish the game, you unlock chapter mode, which allows you to replay chapters. So you can go and replay those odd jobs by just selecting a chapter. So I kind of wish they weren't as heavy-handed with it, because it's like after I do it, I'll just go directly to chapter 5 and do the odd jobs that I didn't do. And we've been ragging on these side quests, and it really pains. Some of them are great, but I would say maybe a third of them are great, and then the next 2/3 are a bit of busy work, which is fine-ish. Sometimes I think I think that a third being great, a third being busy work is fine, but then the fact that another third is also busy work seems a little bit rough. Like I kind of wish it would have been great, good, busy work rather than great, busy work if we were to divide our pie.
Yeah, I think I might divide it up to these are just generically good side quests, and the content of them are maybe considered busy work, but it doesn't feel that way because it's so good. Then there's a lot of combat-oriented busy work, as it were. And finally, the last third, I think, would be narrative busy work, where you're running around talking to people and things like that, which that I appreciate a lot more, because when I'm just fighting again and again and again, it kind of grated on me. I do think that this is a Final Fantasy side quest issue that they really have had some trouble solving. So 14 is, it's an MMORPG, so it's chock full of nothing but side quests, you could argue. And it's a game that is lauded very often for having absolutely impeccable side quests for a lot. There's some real stinkers in there. Sure, it's an MMO, but there are people who I talk to about that game that just talk to me about side quests that they did in A Realm Reborn. And I don't feel like I think of any side quests fondly in 16, like a couple in this game for sure. And 15 like had a couple good ones, but that game had a lot of issues on top of it that kind of held it back. So I feel like there's a Square Enix where we want to do these really in-depth side quests, but somehow the 14 team is nailing it, and the teams that are put in place on these are either padding it out for content, because that's the corporate initiative, is this game has to be 30 hours, versus it's, or maybe that team is just like not in a place to write these compelling side quests, particularly here. This is my last point, particularly here where there is a finite story that they only have so much that they're reasonably going to change. So they have a scaffolding already in place that they have to work around, which I'm sure is very difficult to write quests for.
My gripe with, not how you're saying that, but my gripe with how Square Enix isn't like I do agree with you that Square Enix has an issue with side quests and side quest design. My problem with the Final Fantasy VII Remake and the side quest design is that there are really good side quest design that is the main quest. Like, I'm just gonna say it. I personally really like the train graveyard. I know that a lot of people have a huge gripe with it, and I understand. It sucks from a pacing perspective. It sucks because it's a main quest chapter. But if that was a side quest, I would think that would definitely like reduce practically all the gripes that people have with that whole chapter, because you get to talk, you get to see these sides of both Aerith and Tifa that you don't get to see in the original game. I'm not going to go into specifics because this is technically additional content, so it is a bit of a spoilers. But you get to see some really cool stuff and really cool conversations in that chapter. The problem is that it happens between two chapters that are so fundamentally like high stakes that it feels like you're faffing about. So
yes,
I think I personally, that's I guess my hot take of the day. In a vacuum,
I think it's a very good take.
In a vacuum, that chapter I think is great. Had it been a side quest, an optional side quest that you can do either earlier or later, it would have been amazing and it would have been super easy. Just be like, oh, I can't find my friend. They're in the train graveyard. Can you help me? And then you go and
do that quest.
What's up?
Like there is a side quest in the second half of the game where we have to go find some kids and they're in a graveyard.
Yeah.
We have that side quest exists.
Yes.
And I got like war flashbacks when I had to go do it because I'm like, this better not be long. And no, it was one fight, one and done. But it's like, I didn't realize that there was this much contention. I didn't look up a lot of critical reviews. I just wanted to come into this.
Yeah.
I beat the game this morning.
Oh wow.
So I like 7:30 a.m. We'll get into that. We will get into why I beat that game at 7:30 a.m. this morning in spoiler section, but I beat that game this morning and I wanted to come in super fresh. So I have not looked up anything. I feel very glad to know that I'm not the only one who's like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yes.
And that's why I was alluding to this pacing issue before, where it's just like, I feel so often that the game recognizes that first 8 hours is so concise in the original game, and it creates so much pressure to move forward that, except for the wall market stuff, which happens very early on, you're really just like go in disc 1 in the first 8 hours of Final Fantasy VII. And here there's a lot of walking around and there's a lot of talking to people, and to be honest, I do feel like there's an element of, they're not respecting my time as a player. And I want them to tell these bigger stories. I loved seeing Aerith in Sector 5 and seeing what that was. That was like incredible. I love those side quests, and I'm so glad that I got to be a part of them. And then there's times where it's like, I'm in this train graveyard and I'm fighting an insanely difficult boss. Like Elgor was so difficult.
Yeah.
Sorry to spoil it if you didn't want to know the name of the boss, but I think you'll be okay.
It's difficult, and it is definitely, and my problem with it 100% is the placement of it. It is totally a pacing issue. I think that chapter gets so much more hate than it deserves just because of where it's placed and because it's mandatory. Or even if it was mandatory and you just put it somewhere else, like, you could probably make a good case for it being really good. It's just that it happens essentially, since we're spoiling like the original game, it happens like right before the plate is gonna fall. So you've just learned, oh my god, the plate is gonna fall. I need to go there as soon as possible. Chapter like with 2 or 3 hours of content before that of you guys fapping thing about it. It's like, no, why?
We have Tifa, who is heartbroken over this. She's like convincing herself. She is in denial throughout this entire chapter that you have to be in for 3 hours. And as soon as you fight a giant boss, you leave you leave part of the train graveyard. You leave the warehouse or whatever it is, and then you go into another train graveyard and you fight another boss. It's like, what the fuck are we doing here? Like, it's like, it's just,
I love bosses, so I love it.
I like honestly, if it was just bosses, that would be fine. But I also have to like interact with the environment and move stuff. Like there's some notes I feel like the developers took from Uncharted, from God of War, from a lot of Sony Studio third-person games that don't work here.
Yeah, I agree.
That do not work here. I do not need to long press triangle to pull a lever 200 times. It is simply not building immersion for me. I don't know. It's
One more. I do definitely want to go towards the more positive stuff, because there are story things that are chef's kiss.
Yeah,
this is beautiful.
There's a lot.
But there's one more thing that you touched upon that I really wanted to extend a little bit more, which was some of the side quests are narrative side quests, where it's just essentially talk to this person, and stuff like that. And for the most part, they sometimes do a good job of having a very like world building story. Like, oh, I get to meet these people. I get to actually learn more about the slums. In the original game, it was just like, this is just set dressing, just move along. That's fine. And this one, you really do feel like you are part of almost like a community if you actually care about things. My problem is I don't have a problem with enemy variety in this game. I do have a problem with NPC variety in this game.
It is kind of narrow, isn't it?
So in the original game, everything is so blocky that you really have to use your imagination to fill in the gaps. So it's kind of like reading a book where, oh, I imagine this character sounds this way and looks this way and they're pretty cool and all these different things. In the original Final Fantasy, you imagine, okay, I am Cloud. I have a giant sword. There's my friend has a giant gun for a hand. And my other friend is a boxer and she's punching stuff and has brass knuckles and all these things. So in my head, I'm imagining, okay, since they're going through communities and they're walking around and all these different things, how they're dressed and how they like communicate and everything like this, that must be commonplace. There must be other people. Like, we can't see in this blocky mess that this guy has a sword or a gun or anything like that. But I imagine they're packing because they are just, this is the world they live in. They live in a horrible place.
They are packing in this game. Everybody has like an AK-47
only
or something. But
I counted. On stream, I counted how many people in the Sector 8 slums were packing versus how many people weren't. It was less than 1% of the people had any indication of a weapon. I was counting, oh, that person looks like they can use their fist to punch really bad. Or that guy has a utility knife in his pocket, so I'm going to count him. Like, I was giving it the benefit of the doubt, deep. And it was still less than 1% of like characters. And now in this game, you have the problem of it's so hyper like realistic, or not hyper realistic, but it is like super like they're trying to make it more of a lived in world and all these different things. And literally everybody looks like 2020s like fashion trends. Like, nobody looks like Cloud. Nobody looks like Tifa. Nobody looks like Aerith, who is like the most normally dressed character out of everybody. It has the anime main character syndrome. Right? Where you can tell the JoJo stand syndrome. Who could be the stand user? Is it that guy?
Who could be in Avalanche, Fran? Who could be in Avalanche?
And I so wish that they just put them with more guns or swords or something like that. Just make him more dynamic. Make it more that this world, don't take me out of the experience by being like, why doesn't anybody realize that I'm the guy who they're looking for, when literally everybody else is in like friggin' dungarees or jeans and a jacket, and it's like, obviously it's me.
Yeah, I wonder if this is a game. I haven't played the Like a Dragon series, and I wonder if that is a series that has this issue as well. I know that the main characters in there tend to be more flamboyantly dressed, but I wonder if there's like a normalcy about the rest of Kamurocho, the fictional part of Japan that they invent for that game series. And yeah, I don't know. I agree. I just agree. Like, there's not much for me to add here because I think you're right. And I want to dispel and suspend my disbelief. It is really difficult because there's like an element of stealth in the original game that is a function of the game feeling somehow much, much bigger. I think the original game, those areas were physically and in game memory much, much smaller than what we have here in Final Fantasy VII Remake. And yet the world feels much, much, much bigger. Yeah. And I feel like it's easier to get lost in the PS1 version. I'm sure some of that's part of those muddy graphics and the painted backgrounds and stuff like that. And in this, it's just like I spend so much time in the same locales around the same NPCs that it's just like I don't feel very stealthy or secretive. Yeah. I just always feel like I stand out, which is fine. I'm always the main character of the story, so why not? But it's tough when half the game is you being pursued by Shinra. And I wonder if this is also a function of Shinra is looking for you for 30 hours, if
Yeah.
that's how long you're playing the game
True,
for,
fair,
as
fair.
opposed to 3-4 hours in the original, and like there's a lot going on. Like it particularly feels outrageous when you go to Shinra HQ at the end. And it's like very frustrating to me because I just feel like there's this element of it's so fantastic that I stop believing it. And there's a lot of camp in that section in the original game, and they try to do it here, and it just didn't work for me for some reason. Like there's like some elements of the original game was so campy, and that was one of the like real moments of endearment and love for me for the original, is that it is so campy and silly, and you don't expect that, and that's really cool. And here I'm expecting it because I know it's a part of this game, and sometimes it feels great when they do it. Like there's one side quest where a little kid calls Barrett you stupid old man, and it's just like so off the cuff that I couldn't believe it, and it was just delivered with such a straight face. It was great. Like there's a lot of really great little one-liners like that, and then there's other times where it's like we're walking through Shinra HQ, and it's guy with giant sword on his back, guy with a gun for his arm, not wearing a shirt, only a vest, and it's a woman wearing a mini skirt with suspenders, and it's with unbelievable body proportions, and it's like, what are we talking about here? I feel like I'm physically taller than these other NPCs at times, and it's like
I wouldn't be surprised if we are. Which, by the way, I'm turning it back into positive.
Roll it back.
Holy shit, the character design of these characters is immaculate. Tifa, love it. Aerith, love it. Barrett, they gave him sunglasses, and he's so much cooler.
Cool. It's wild that that's what was missing.
It's wild that just one change. Nomura came into the design. They were 8 hours sweating. What are we going to do for Barrett? What are we going to do for Barrett? Sunglasses. Gunk.
That's it.
Shoot. And whenever you see him without sunglasses, he's great, and it just hits harder. Those parental scenes, because every time he's interacting with Marlene, usually he doesn't have his glasses, so he's being more of a father. It's kind of like a mask for him, like literally and figuratively. It's his mask, and love it. Which I guess gets a little bit more into the story. Not just character design visually, character design narratively. Jason, how do you feel that they did with these characters in a narrative perspective?
So honestly, I think they did quite well. I really appreciate having these characters fleshed out at the beginning of the game a little bit more. I think I do feel like the narrative is a bit heavy-handed, and I think that part of this is just a function of the pacing being a bit off. So there's like different stakes at different times. Overall, I will say that the parts where I find the narrative, like character building and characterization, to be flagging is the main characters. And I think the side characters getting a lot more spotlight has really added to my enjoyment of the series. Yes. And I think it goes without saying that I'm, of course, talking about Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse.
Yes, they get so much more, so much more story, and it's great. I enjoy it.
It's really wonderful, and it builds out the experience of Avalanche more. Just in terms of the overall story narrative in the first 7 hours in that disc 1, I was so impressed with the way that Avalanche feels like more. It both feels like more of an organization and somehow less.
Yes.
This is desperately fixed by the Yuffie DLC. I played like an hour.
Okay, I need to check that out then, because I avoided it for the podcast because I didn't want my views to get tainted by that.
If you literally just play like less than an hour of it, I think it does wonders for expanding the experience of being a cell of Avalanche.
Interesting. Okay,
it's pretty cool. I was a little surprised at this experience. It does create a lot of issues with Yuffie's character, but only because of the way the storyline branches in this game versus the original.
Gotcha.
I would say that honestly, like besides like the Jesse, Wedge, Biggs like character growth, even seeing Like Heidegger's exactly the same, and I love him for it. Scarlet's way worse, and I love her for it. She's like just a meaner character. Like all of the villains feel so much better. The president, I think, is fine.
Yeah.
I don't think that I got much out of it.
Final Fantasy VII, we're spoiling that. He dies in the first 7 hours. It's fine.
Yeah, he barely has any character.
You don't need
any lines.
You don't need him. What you do need is Rufus, and Rufus as a character, badass. Like
Rufus was great. That was awesome. I think
I want to let you finish.
So I think that narratively, my moments of just pure joy are when Jesse's being a flirt and like Wedge just wants to be Cloud's best friend, and Cloud's like slow, like you think Cloud's resisting it, but then you get the foil of Johnny and Cloud hates him. Everybody hates Johnny, and it's very obvious that Cloud like just doesn't know how to be a friend.
Yes.
With Wedge. And I think that's really sweet. So I love seeing Cloud grow more as a character. I just feel like there's this like will they won't they-ness in the story with Cloud and all of the female characters that I find a lot more forced and a lot more fan servicey in this game than in the original. And it almost feels like they are like the developers are egging on this like OTP, like in a post-ship AO3 world. They know that people are going to be asking this will they won't they, and I want it to develop like it does in the game, in the original game. And I feel like here there's just like I was playing it with on the couch, and Aislinn was watching me, and she's like, what is with Jesse and Tifa? Like, why are they like dripping off of Cloud? And he's the most like cardboard stiff human I've ever seen. I'm like, well, he's barely human. He's, he is a soldier, ex-soldier,
as he will repeatedly tell you. I think that from a character standpoint, this game vindicates me personally, my soul, in that
I didn't realize the stakes were so high.
Cloud, ever since Final Fantasy VII, Cloud has had such a huge like branding problem where everybody is like, oh, Cloud is like an emo Sasuke wannabe. It's like, oh, I'm hurt, and like you see him in Kingdom Hearts, and he's like, my heart, I can't do this anymore. You see him in Advent Children, and he's like, I'm dressed in black because it's the color of my soul, and all this stuff. And this game gets it so well. What I thought was, when I played it, I thought, this is a dork. This is a guy.
He's a dork. He's a real dork.
In high school, wore combat boots and was like ready and had like a backpack with a utility knife because he's ready to do anything he needs to do to survive, yet cannot talk to anyone because they are socially inept. And and I love
it's good.
I love how you can see throughout the story him opening up little by little throughout the whole game. At the beginning of the game, when you're playing with Barrett will be like, oh, you saw that? Now that was something. And Cloud would be like, that was nothing. Or like being very like emotionally detracted and be like get over yourself. Or when Barrett is like, can't you hear the earth? Like, I know you can. It's like, you can hear that. Cloud says, you can hear that. And Barrett said, yes. And Cloud is like, get help. like he is such an asshole, but not because he's trying to be an asshole. It's because he literally doesn't know how to interact with humans, with other people, because he was bullied as a young kid. Because, well, in this game, we don't get to learn about that because it's only the first disc. But in the original game, you know that he's been bullied. He's been trying to be like this soldier for his whole life and all these different things. And then later on at the end of the game, those same conversations happen again. And this time it's Cloud saying, hey, good job. And Barrett is like, yeah, whatever. Like being like, oh, he's being a sarcastic asshole. So he's just being, oh yeah, good job. And then by the end, he's like, hey, good job. And then Barrett is like, yeah, you too. And it's like, oh, yes, this is juicy. They did my boy right. They did it.
I think so. I think you're absolutely correct. I agree that I think Cloud's arc in particular is wonderful, and it is great to behold. I just felt like some of like mainly the female characters were done a little dirty. I think the voice actors were exceptional across the board. There's basically like no notes. Everybody gave like an incredible performance of a lifetime. But the writing for Tifa in particular felt really, really one-dimensional.
Interesting.
And I was a little disappointed because Aislinn asked me while we were playing, she's like, my partner Aislinn was like, who's in love with who? I'm like, well, that's an interesting question. She's like, well, what's your OTP? Well, I was like, my one true pair is, Cloud's one true pair is Aerith, but Tifa's is Cloud, and you can do with that how you wish. And I think it's the game does a good job of pairing that out and parsing that out, but Tifa just feels like, I don't know, she feels like, honestly, like such a pick-me. I
tentatively disagree. It is not something that I wholeheartedly disagree because I could be swayed. This is not a hill that I'd be willing to die on but I personally disagree a little bit in that I think that their characteristic shines through of the whole idea of the original Final Fantasy VII with Tifa and Aerith is that they are interchange of what in past media you would have expected their character archetypes to be. So Aerith, you would have expected her to be very dainty, very weak, very soft-spoken because she's the healer and all white mages are like that. And Tifa, she's the monk, she's the punch-up person, she gets in your face and all these things. So you expect her to be very aggressive and very assertive and stuff like that. And I at least feel in this game the voice actors did a really good job at hey, Tifa is very confident in herself in like physically. She is very confident. She will kick ass and all these things. Right. But in her conviction, in her like, is this the right thing to do? What are we doing? We'll get into like the eco-terrorism of it all later on. But is this the right thing to do? Are we more hurting or are we actually helping and all these different things? So you are getting this side, like essentially not weakness, but different shades of a character that usually in a very one-dimensional game you wouldn't get. I wouldn't say she's the like deepest or like character out there at all, but I don't think that she's one-dimensional either. And Aerith, on the flip side, she is the one who is definitely super confident from an interpersonal, from a convictions level, but obviously from a physical level, she's the white mage. She can't punch anyone or do anything like that, and she doesn't know much about the world outside of her bubble and all these different things. But I mean, the number one scene that I feel personally is like peak Aerith is when she's climbing that ladder in that one scene and she's like, I'm not some princess that you need to be like taking care of, and then she slips and almost falls and grabs on really quickly and she goes shit and like she curses and it's like perfect. That's exactly what I expect Aerith to be, like cursing. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Aerith curses more than Tifa, which is what you would have expected.
Totally believe that.
Expected. So I get where you're coming from, and I think that it is valid, the whole like relationship between Cloud and these characters. I think that spoiling Final Fantasy VII and our Final Fantasy VII podcast as well, spoiling that, I do think that Cloud-Aerith relationship is more of a rebound relationship for Aerith than anything. Like Cloud reminds her of Zack. So I get that relationship. And Tifa, it's very difficult just taking this story by itself, but Tifa and Cloud do have some previous. So if we're talking about Remake by itself, I agree. But having previous knowledge, I kind of disagree, I guess. Type of deal.
I think that's totally reasonable. Mostly where I'm coming from is just that when Tifa is talking to Cloud, and this happens a lot at the beginning of the game, leading up to her meeting Aerith, she's fawning over Cloud. And it feels a lot different than friends who just saw each other for the first time in a long time. it just feels like there's a really intense will they won't they energy that I found like it was just cloying after a while. Like I wanted it there. I just didn't want as much as they gave me.
And maybe it's a pacing thing. Yeah, maybe you're right.
There was so much excitement to put all these characters together that it created that tension and it created that experience of like, oh, we want them to be interacting and show like their romantic feelings towards each other. And it just got to the point where it's like, oh my God, Tifa, just kiss him. The one thing I do want to comment on, I realize we're kind of long in the tooth here on all this stuff, but I want to get into game development shortly. You mentioned that Aerith doesn't know much about the world outside of her bubble. And I think that is 100% true in the original game.
There
is the very moment that you meet Aerith, and you meet Aerith in the middle of chapter 3 of this game of Remake. The first interaction you have with Aerith via Cloud is, I think, the same exact one from the original game. They bump into each other in Sector 6, I think, or Sector 5 or something like that.
5, I believe, or 5, I believe. One of the sectors.
Maybe it was 3. It might have been 3.
3 or 5.
They bump into the sector after they bomb the reactor, and they bump into each other, and she gives them a flower. And that exact moment, the way Aerith is talking and composing herself, she very clearly has so much more knowledge. And this persists throughout the game, where Aerith has this extraordinary, almost supernatural understanding of what's actually happening here. And there's this like dramatic irony and this tension that the game is building between you, the player, and Aerith, the character, because presumably you, the player, have an intense knowledge or likely some knowledge of what happened in the original Final Fantasy VII for the PS1. And it seems as though Aerith does as well.
Which is very poignant because that is by design, but we will talk about that is definitely
in the spoilers.
A spoiler like I agree.
That's the spoiler of the game.
That's
probably
the spoiler of the game. If you're still here 55 minutes in and we haven't convinced you to not or to play the game, then I guess spoiler. Spoiler alert.
Yeah. So we're an hour in. We haven't done the history or game development.
This was a short
we
one.
haven't really covered story themes. Do you want to do the history and then we'll hit some top line story theme stuff and then maybe swap to spoilers?
I'm fine doing just the history and then going into spoilers, and we can just do the story themes and spoilers because we already talked a little bit about it essentially has the same themes as the original Final Fantasy VII Midgar section. So eco-terrorism, climate crisis, post-late stage capitalism, power of friendship together, and all these different things. So it's a pretty par for the course. We can talk about more nitty-gritty stuff in the spoiler section.
Yeah. I will add, if you're listening to this and you are here because you're interested in what we have to say on Final Fantasy VII Remake, but you didn't play the original, please reach out to us on Discord. That you are the human that I want to talk to, because that's what I want. I want to talk to the person who's like, I never played the original, and this is my jumping on point, because I feel like you are a unicorn and you should be cherished. So come to Discord and I will cherish you.
So a little bit about the game development. This one is actually pretty straightforward. There wasn't anything from a development standpoint that was weird or kooky or anything like that.
Nobody in the development history of this game made a game that is illegal to release or reproduce in any way, shape, or form. That didn't happen here.
That didn't happen. They did release a game that haunted them for the rest of their lives until the year 2020, and that's essentially where I want to talk about. Instead of talking about like the development of this game, which was pretty par for the course, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the lead up to the development of the game, right? So Final Fantasy VII releases in 1997, and much rejoicing does gangbusters. Like, holy snap, like this is Final Fantasy is now a household name, essentially. Like before this, Final Fantasy was very popular for games. Final Fantasy VII is the first one that breaks out of the nerd culture and enters the general zeitgeist. Final Fantasy VIII releases in 1999, 2 years later, and graphically is such an upgrade over Final Fantasy VII. Essentially, all the character models from in combat in Final Fantasy VII is now the world character model. They're a lot more defined. They're a lot more graphically impressive, and all these different things. And that's because Final Fantasy VII was their first 3D game. It was their first game on the PS1. There was a lot of things going against it. So, when Final Fantasy VIII releases and they realize, oh my god, this looks so much better than Final Fantasy VII, kind of ashamed, isn't it? And then Final Fantasy X comes out 2 years later in 2001 on the PS2, and the floodgates opened. This is where it all happened. From now on, starting in 2001, there would be rumors and clamoring of, they're gonna remake Final Fantasy VII for the PS2. I swear, it's gonna be just like Final Fantasy X. It's gonna be great. In early 2000s, Square announces, in quotes, remakes for 7, 8, and 9 for the PS2. I put in quotation marks because the only official source that I could find was from GameSpot, and is from a 2006 article, which would have been a few years after this would have been announced. I cannot find this information anywhere else. All the forum posts say that it was just a rumor, that it wasn't really announced and everything like that. So take it with a grain of salt. I will say, side note, I know we're going a little bit long, but I have to say this because holy shit, This is crazy. Apparently one of the posters on a forum remarked that it got canceled due to the failure of Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within. Which, if you don't know about this is a feature film movie that came out in theaters. One of the voice actors is Alec Baldwin, so this is supposed to be very mainline type thing, and it just
high budget
for the time. Like it looks like ass, but high budget for the time, and it flops. It is just does horrible. This might have. If they were going to do a remake, then definitely this would have been it, because Square almost went under because of this. In fact, Enix, which later on they joined together to become Square Enix, their conversations were put on hold because of this movie. This movie came out and Enix was like, holy shit, I don't think we want to merge anymore. You guys are bleeding money. I don't think we can do this. Sony...
I did not know that Spirits Within almost killed Square.
It almost killed Square. There's a company called Square Pictures, which was supposed to be their film branch. That is their only film. They opened, they made that movie, they closed. $100 million loss. It was bad.
Catastrophic.
In fact, Square Enix as it exists today probably wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for Sony, who did a huge injection into Square with money, but telling them cool it with the games, cancel a bunch of games. That is known that Sony did that. Whether one of those games was the Final Fantasy VII Remake for the PS2, we don't know. In 2005, the Flames were stoked again, because why would they do this? They pulled a Nintendo and decided to do a PS3 tech demo, which was the Midgar opening scenes on the PS3, which stoked the Flames.
I remember this coming out.
And now everybody is like, oh my God, this is it. PS3, FF7 Remake. This is everybody's clamoring for this. This is I cannot convey how much people wanted the Final Fantasy VII Remake to be made. And then Advent Children comes out. And everybody's like, that's it. Those must be the new models for the Final Fantasy VII Remake. They're making an excuse for a movie. They make the models. They have this movie. And then all they need to do is re-rig those models into the older game. And we're good. We're good, right?
Oh, my God.
10th anniversary comes and goes and not a word. Nothing about the Final Fantasy VII Remake. Again, another grain of salt. But in 2011, another person that we've talked about, both good and bad of, Hideo Kojima tweets that he's having dinner with Tetsuya Nomura and Yoichi Wada, which is the Square Enix CEO. Somebody replies to them, hey, you should tell them to Nomura to remake FF7, and whether Kojima was being truthful or not, he replied, I passed it along. did this actually happen? A bunch of forum posts have links to dead links that I could not find. I looked through his Twitter, both in Japanese and in English, and could not find this. But a lot of people seem to agree that it did happen. First of all, did it happen? We don't know. Second of all, was Kojima just lying just for the memes? We don't know either. He's that kind of guy, so.
I mean, I could very well see it like 4 glasses of wine in. Oh, everybody on Twitter's telling you to remake Final Fantasy VII, Nomura. Why don't you get on that? And he's like, oh, fuck yourself. Anyway,
dinner ends.
When are we going to put, when are we going to put Snake in Smash Brothers?
Yes, Sakurai was in the dinner as well. In fact, Shigeru Miyamoto was there too. Iwata was there too. You know what? Everybody
was there.
It was the Smash Bros.
I'm
of
more
dinners.
thinking. I don't remember when Snake joined Smash, but I have to imagine at some point somebody had to be ribbing Kojima and just being like, "Wow, you finally made it. Your character that you spent your life developing is in Smash Brothers."
Oh, we've done it. So yeah, rumors abound. This is now at this point, by 2011, this is over a decade of rumors of like, is it happening? Is it not happening? And all these things. So one day, Shinji Hashimoto, marketing producer on the original FF7, approached the key members of the original. Yoshinori Kitase, which was the director, Kazushige Nojima, which was the writer, or a writer, and Tetsuya Nomura, which was the character designer, and apparently I learned this, the game designer of Limit Breaks. He was the one who created Limit Breaks.
What?
Crazy. What a beautiful man. I love this man.
In Nomura we trust.
In Nomura we trust. Crazy guy. He's great. Love him. So they start talking about life. This was just a casual conversation. And then it goes to where all these conversations usually go. Morbidity and the fact that they're all getting older and they're going to be passing on soon.
That's wild. That is a wild conversation to have.
So it hits them that if they don't make the FF7 remake soon, they're going to be too old to have any or of the original developers working on it. And they feel that seems wrong. That feels wrong to not have any blessing or any of the key members working on it that were in the original. So Kitase, the original director, starts messaging Nomura questions like, hey, what if we do this? What if we do that? And Nomura was like, I don't understand why you're asking me these questions, but I guess I would do it this way, right? We're talking hypothetical here, right, Kitase? We're not actually making this right Kitase? Internal presentation pitching the game was given, and the last slide says, Director Tetsuya Nomura, which he had no fracking clue that he was going to be the director. He thought Kitase was going to be the director because he was the original developer, and he was working on Kingdom Hearts 3 at that point in time. So, what am I doing here? And Kitase was like, no, I thought you knew that you'd be the director. And Nomura was like, I thought you'd be the director. God. Eventually another director was brought in. They co-directed together FF7 Remake. Because Nomura was directing both FF7 Remake and
the co-director somebody else big too?
It's yes, it's a big name within Square Enix, but unfortunately he wasn't part of the original 4 that had this conversation, so I kind of left him out. My B. Jason, clickety clackety.
No. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
Much to people's surprise, when it finally got announced, and oh my God, Jason, the hairs on my forearms got so goosebumpy when this got released. If you weren't there, you had to be there. All it is a hallway scene, and the camera is moving forward as people are walking forward and back. And all of a sudden, you see the backs of 2 people come into frame in the backs, and you see a black buff dude, and you're like, don't hurt me this way. Don't do it. Don't do it. I know you want me to think that this is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Don't do it, Square Enix, you bastards. And then all of a sudden, you see the other character come into frame, his back, and the giant Buster Sword. I'm getting goosebumps right now, bro. It was a moment in time. This is one of those, like...
That's awesome.
One of those, like, unchangeable things in the timelines. This is like a core timeline existence, and I love it. But everything has a dark side. Wait, why is Nojima returning as a writer? Isn't the story already finished? Wait, isn't this gonna be an HD remaster like Final Fantasy X remaster that came out last year? Square Enix, what's going on? The story may change, and all of a sudden, fear gripped the hearts of fans around the world. So, why remake FF7? And I want to talk about this very quickly because I know we're going over a little bit. Square Enix had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity here. You need to understand that all they had to do was hire 80% artists, animators, make sure that every follicle of hair on Barrett's beard looks good. All they had to do was hire a shit ton of animators and artists, a few engineers, and even less game designers, and just re-release the game that everybody wanted and the game that was there. But they didn't want to do that. They could have printed money, but they didn't want. This is the one time I've ever seen a big corporation not choose the capitalist choice. This finally, we have a artist first rendition of the game, and I wish for once in my life that capitalist had won.
Wow, I can't wait to see that short. I can't wait to see that TikTok.
In its own way, I find it admirable though. They didn't want to remaster Final Fantasy VII. They wanted to remake it. They wanted to make it updated to the new, like, modern day tendencies, new game design, new everything. And you know what? It's heartwarming in a way, both heartbreaking and heartwarming in a way that they made this choice. And now the question lies, is FF7 Remake as groundbreaking as FF7 original? Well, I guess you'll have to find out in the final verdict.
I think, I have to say, I think your delivery was excellent. But I find it more than admirable. I am emboldened by the choice to remake the game and change the story and rewrite the narrative and the characters to a degree, because I feel like in the 21st century, especially in the world that we live in, remakes and re-releases are extremely plentiful. And I feel like corporations in particular feel that there is a certain safety to them.
Yes.
And I think Netflix has done an exceptional job proving to us that that's not true. Circa all of their anime live action adaptations, except for One Piece, apparently. And I think that there is something extremely just exciting about the fact that they were not only given the green light to do this, but they wanted to do it in their first place, in the sense that I'm just like, we've seen this story. We've played through this story. We can still play through this story. I think it should have gotten another, I guess it's pretty much been released on Steam and everywhere else. So, like, access to the original game is as plentiful as it has ever been. And I am just, like, so excited that we chose to take an artistic direction to tell the same story but different this time around.
Yes.
And I think that's awesome. I think it's maybe the smartest thing to do in the face of, rabid, awful fans who probably won't be happy no matter what you do, a real
fair.
Star Wars problem.
Yeah.
And I think that just choosing, hey, we're going to remake it, we're going to rewrite it, and we're going to change some things around. And that's what we want to do. We've had this story. Do I think that it's successful? That's a different question. That's a very different question, and not one that I will answer without an attorney present.
Well, I mean, I'm going to bring you to court and make you on the stand hit me with your spoiler-free verdict. What is it? What is it? What do you feel?
My spoiler-free verdict is that if I think it is an exceptional work of art. I am constantly impressed by the things that are going on in the game, its fidelity and its quality. I love it. I really do. It's not the original, and I think that's okay. Mm-hmm. And I think if you are looking to dip your toes into Final Fantasy in the 21st century, if you're the kind of person who says, everybody talks about this stuff, I want to be a part of it, I would just start here. Mm-hmm. I think it has all of the trappings of a modern game. I think it fulfills all of the expectations of a modern game. I think it gives you enough of what makes Final Fantasy for you to get started. And I think unlike Final Fantasy VII, like the original, I think the average gamer who's not an RPG nut, who's not into retro gaming, I think you're far more likely to bounce off of the original PS1 game than you are here.
Yeah.
And my only caveat to all of that is that I'm sorry that they chose to do everything in their power to welcome new players, and then they wrote a story so convoluted that it is functionally impossible for a new player to fully enjoy it.
Yes. In the original game, not even in the original game, there is some convolution in the Midgar section, but this game does add some level of convolution that will not be understood by non-fans of the game. There's a lot, like, this is where we're going back to that behind the box, that it says that it's for all generations, but I don't 100% agree with that. I think that there's something good enough here that even if you haven't played the original one, you'll have some fun with this one. But this game is such a better experience if you've played the original game, in my opinion. Yeah, it has a lot of filler, but you know what? It also adds a lot of beautiful dialogue that makes me realize, brings to fruition why I fell in love with these characters in the first place. I'm going to bury the lead a little bit here since we're going into the spoiler section and say that, like we have been saying, this is a reimagining of the Midgar section. It is not Final Fantasy Remake, it's Final Fantasy Remake. With the like accent on the make part instead of the re part. And it really feels like, to me personally, kind of like recommending Marvel's What If, where like one of those episodes is, what if T'Challa is Star-Lord without knowing who the Black Panther or Peter Quill is? Like, sure, you might enjoy the what if story, but you're definitely going to get a lot more enjoyment if you know who the Black Panther and Peter Quill is in those like alternate universe, what if this happened. So I'd say if you can stomach it, play the original first. There are a lot of mods that make the graphics much more bearable. There's one that I learned about recently that they take the Omnimania models and just for the main 9 characters. Unfortunately, they don't have every single character modeled this way, but it just puts those models and puts them in, and it looks really good actually. Like with the HD background texture and those character models, it looks like a kind of like the Final Fantasy 1, 2, and 3 remakes that they made for the Nintendo DS. It kind of feels like that, and it looks really nice. So I would say maybe if you know how to mod it, it's pretty easy. There's a lot of instructions how to do it. For a full recommendation, I kind of feel like I need to wait until the full trilogy is out. Honestly, at this point, you've already waited this long, so maybe you can wait a few more years for the actual trilogy to be out. And then I'd say Remake is worth it if one of 3 things is true. Either A, the trilogy follows the same narrative as the original, then yes, 100% play it. If the trilogy has a different narrative, but it's just as good, if not better, yeah, new story, it's better. Nobody's gonna hate that. Well, there will be haters.
Yeah.
Or
for sure.
Number 3, and this one is one that I'm actually kind of hoping happens just from a fuck corpo standpoint, which is that modders come in clutch and do a phantom edit scenario where they mod the game, the trilogy, into one one story or one game that is just the original game, and that's it. Kind of like the Phantom Edit, if you don't know, is the prequel, Star Wars prequel trilogy, in which they've edited all those 3 movies into one movie, and it apparently is really good. I haven't seen it. Apparently, they did a lot of fun stuff, like Jar Jar Binks now has an alien voice, and they subtitle it, so that way he doesn't need to say any of his dumb lines. It's apparently pretty darn good. What's the name of the Venom in the Spider-Man 3? Something Grace, the actor. Apparently, he's the one who bankrolled the Phantom Edit, but it's impossible to find because it's technically illegal. So yeah.
Oh, Topher Grace.
Topher Grace. There you go. That's the name.
I was like Venom. Ed Hardy. What does he have to do with this?
No, Spider-Man 3.
I see.
3.
I realize. Yeah, I'm like trying to remember who Eddie Brock played in 2000. Who played Eddie Brock in 2006?
Sam Raimi.
Holy. Sam Raimi's great. I think you said it beautifully, Fran. I do. I think there's, I don't know. I'm very curious to see what a new generation, like there are gamers who are out there who have only played these games.
Yes.
Remake and Rebirth. You are the people I want to talk to.
Yes.
I want to talk to only you, and I want to protect you. I want to put you in a reserve and keep you safe, because I don't know why you would, but it's you're special. I think I'm ready to get into spoilers. So thank you so much for joining us. If you are leaving us, thank you for staying. Join us on Discord. Follow us on social media, particularly at Blue Sky, in the links in the podcast description. You can also find us on Instagram, but I wouldn't recommend it because fuck Meta. Otherwise, we recommend that you go play the game and then come back and join us, because we will be spoiling the rest of Final Fantasy VII Remake, as well as, I think I'll go as far as to say, anything that has happened in the original Final Fantasy VII,
yes,
including the end of that game.
Yes.
So if either of those are jumping off points, again, thank you for joining us. We love you. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. And as always, do not forget to use your items. We're back. Welcome. It's Use Your Items. We're a video game podcast, and no matter what anyone tells you, I did it because Sephiroth told me. I love him, and I will do anything that he says, and it's not fair that Cloud gets to hear him whispering, and I don't. I want it. I deserve it. I love him. I'll do it. I'll do it, Sephiroth. I'll carry Genova for you.
I need to know. I need to know if this is, how much of this is a joke, and how do you feel about the whole Sephiroth in the room?
The voice actor is phenomenal.
Oh, obviously.
The delivery is exceptional. I mean, it's like the epitome of a Sephiroth to me. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great. He looks unbelievably hot. So yes. Top notch. Looks great. The model's like exceptional. I mean, I don't know. Honestly, like narratively, I thought it was really stupid.
Yes,
I will just lay it out there.
I was like, oh, I'm gonna disagree with you so much.
Oh no. I'm like fangirling over Sephiroth the character. I think his inclusion, to the degree that it is in Final Fantasy VII Remake, is a real detriment to the game, and
Agreed.
It's the most Nomura I've felt, just bleeding through the writing.
I'm going to benefit of the doubt and say that this is not necessarily just a Nomura thing. I bet that this is a capitalism thing, or a branding thing.
Okay. The reason I bring that up, and I think, to be fair, I do think you're right, and I do think that it's just like, we have to put Sephiroth in. It's a Final Fantasy game, and that's what people know.
Yeah.
I actually think that's 100% right. However, it does just reek of Sephiroth and Cloud being in every Kingdom Hearts game.
Yes, I agree that their relationship is a very Kingdom Hearts centric.
Which is also kind of a capitalism thing.
Yes, which Kingdom Hearts is true capitalism. Like Kingdom Hearts is light. No, Kingdom Hearts is capitalism.
One day I will get my fucking Disney World. They will put like Kingdom Hearts in Hollywood studios, and I swear to you, I will become an annual pass holder that year. It will be a problem.
It's good.
I will be insufferable.
It's a small world, but you're just going through all the worlds in Kingdom Hearts.
Anything would be better than It's a Small World. I'm good. Just leave me Pirates of the Caribbean. Anyway, this is not a Disney podcast, and it never will be. But yeah, I don't know. It's so heavy-handed.
Yeah.
It's so cloying, and just like
it
starts off really cool.
Yes, yeah.
It starts off really cool, and then it's just like, if I watch Cloud get a migraine one more time, if I see one more Black Feather, if I see one more Sephiroth clone stumbling through Midgar, and like that, maybe the most believable thing is that nobody cares and nobody's going to deal with what is effectively homeless people, because that's just how life is and that's how people are. But moreover, the fact that they all have their shoulders ripped so that you can see the number on their arm is like that's like maybe my favorite part of it all.
Yes, I 100% agree with you. I think that Sephiroth's character is super cool. I agree with you that from a business standpoint, it makes sense. Unfortunately, now that we're in the spoiler section, I will say that as far as, well, I think that they did a good job as to give him motivation for interacting with the main crew in Midgar. With that, in the original game, Sephiroth doesn't give a fuck about the crew because they are nothing to him.
He doesn't care at all.
He doesn't care. He doesn't know who you are. You think that Cloud thinks that you are a mortal enemy of Sephiroth, and Sephiroth is like, I don't remember you at all. Who are you? And because he has the memories of Zack and all these different things and everything. So, but this is a Sephiroth that knows what happens in the original game. And it is a Sephiroth that is trying to convince you to kill the Fates because you think that that is the right thing to do to be able to save the world, when in fact what you're doing is you are opening the opportunity for Sephiroth to win because he knows that he loses. So I thought that was pretty creative, from a metatextual standpoint.
It's really creative, but from barring the multiverse Marvel cinematic universe of it all, it's like really it just creates so much dramatic and narrative pressure and tension with Aerith, who is also like, the only thing I'll say to this kill Destiny, kill Fate, buck Destiny thing that's going on throughout the game is that it feels so close to what's going on in the original, which is so unnecessarily confusing and the way they describe it is so obtuse that it feels just like the way they explain Zack and Cloud and Sephiroth's relationship at the end of the original Final Fantasy VII. Whereas it's just barring the fact that they don't tell you that the whispers, that the ghosts, the enigmas, the specters are whispers, which are the planet trying to prescribe the destiny that it knows to be true.
Yes. And
barring the fact that destiny exists and is real, it's like Aerith is pushing you to destroy destiny just as much as Sephiroth.
Yeah.
And to me, the only thing that will make that tension interesting is if in Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which neither of us have played, right? You haven't played it.
No, I have not.
Neither of us have played, is if we find out that Aerith did it because she doesn't want to fucking die. That will be the delivery of the century.
That is okay.
That will sell it entirely for me, because otherwise it just feels like she thinks that this is the heroic thing to do. And we got a flash of her dying.
Yes.
We get a flash of her dying at the end. I just found the whole thing, it's so heavy-handed and it's Yeah,
I do
don't
agree
know.
with you.
I
think that this is a case of not the so I'm gonna say the non-Jossification, which is, or the anti-Jossification of Sephiroth, which
Are you talking about Joss Whedon?
no, Jaws the shark.
What?
So I'm talking about how
Jaws.
The
Oh, I'm mishearing you. I'm sorry. I thought you said Joss. I'm like, what is Joss Whedon? Why are you bringing him up?
No. Fuck that guy.
Yes, fuck that guy. But
Jaws the shark. Don't fuck Jaws the shark. Jaws the shark did nothing wrong. It is a creature of nature and it should have been saved.
oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What I was trying to say is that Sephiroth is like Jaws, in that the original writers of the original game knew that the less they show of the main villain, the more like fear, the better, and you're gonna build up to this character.
It's like Hitchcockian.
Yes, it's
right?
super Hitchcockian, super like in the original. Nojima, good job, good job. In this one, definitely anti-Jossification. That's what I'm trying to say, of like they went the opposite direction of like, we're gonna show off the character and be badass and all these different things. And maybe it would have been good if they would have just had him be an optional battle and the virtual battle arcade like battle thing, make him be in there and
like
just
Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah, very, very Kingdom Hearts. Make him super powerful. In fact, make it almost nigh impossible to beat. Make it that you're supposed to be level 80 to beat him, but it's capped at level 50, so you cannot beat him, or some bullshit like that. So that way, that would have sold narratively like this guy is powerful. Granted, you do beat him in this game, but it is a Sephiroth that is letting you win because he wants you to destroy this version of himself and Destiny, so that way he can win in the future. So, yes, execution, poor idea. Hot take. I think it's not a bad idea.
The idea is cool.
Execution, bad.
I totally agree. As far as like, we're gonna remake this game, how do we remake it? Well, what if since everybody knows how the first game ends and all of the twists and all of the highs and lows of it, what if we take that into account? Mm-hmm. How do we take that into account? Well, what if the main villain and the main hero, Aerith, not Cloud, Aerith, have prior knowledge of this because they're both ancients.
Yeah, postmodern.
I think this is great.
Very postmodern storytelling.
Yeah,
great.
Straightforward. It works for me because they are both ancients. It works for me because the planet probably has some greater sense of the trajectory of time. It feels like in line with like at least Doctor Who logic, which barely works anyway, so that's fine. And it's fun and it feels very Final Fantasy. I don't think there's a problem with what they want to do. Yes. I think that's great. My problem is that I have to have like this Sephiroth dangling. I don't know who it's for, Fran, because I played Final Fantasy VII. I loved Final Fantasy VII, and I loved all those characters and Sephiroth. And I got so fucking tired of seeing him. Aislinn, who watched me play Final Fantasy VII and watched me playing this game, got tired of seeing him. And
Sephiroth, what do you want?
Sephiroth, what do you want? Really? What are we doing? Like, who is this for? Because I my best guess is what you already said is it's for a fucking like bean counter in the head of finance that wants to see line go up.
Yeah.
Because if you're a brand new player and you keep I have to imagine that if you are a brand new player and if you are a brand new player and you never played the original, tell me in Discord. I want to talk to you about this. If you kept seeing Sephiroth and you were like, what was your feeling? Because I can't imagine it would be positive.
No.
I would just feel so I got exhausted chasing Corneo around, and I felt that way in the original game. So that was really just a thoroughfare from 1997.
Yeah,
like I don't know. It was very frustrating to me because it felt so lame. It really just felt like a lameification. It just felt stupid.
Yeah.
It made me feel dorky. It made me feel like, oh, you like the one-winged angel asshole? Here you go. Come and chase it. You want a DLC? You want to buy a little skin? Come on. You want to put it on? I was like, come on, man.
This is where I was saying in the spoiler-free section is that there's a lot of really good content here that I think people would have less of a gripe if it was a side quest, if it was optional, if it was all these different things. And honestly, I would be okay if Sephiroth I guess my extent of Sephiroth showing up in this game, I would have been more okay if he just didn't talk. I know the voice actor is juicy, he's great, and he does a great job in a vacuum juicy. And all that stuff. But if it was more of, is it in Cloud's head? Is he actually seeing Sephiroth or not? Like, because that's how it feels like at the beginning, other than the talking, is like, please don't talk. Because if it's just like flashes and it's like, oh, whoa, that's weird. Maybe make it even more fucked up where in game, while you're walking around, an NPC will flash as Sephiroth or something like that. Like, do something weird with it and crazy and stuff like that. I think that would have worked towards keeping it as a Jaws villain of, oh, is it in my head? And we're not going to show you too much of it because we want the big bad to be more of a thing while still showing him off. And then have him be in a battle simulation thing where he's the final bad guy that you need to beat.
I think if you take out Sephiroth and replaced every instance of him being there with an instance of seeing Cloud from a third person perspective, having like a real break with reality, a real psychotic like freeze. Like he does this in the game, but we see it from his perspective. If you only saw it from Tifa or Aerith or Barrett's perspective of a deeply troubled young man who has been through a severe genetic and scientific testing to make him into this super soldier, having like these psychotic breaks, I think you're telling a very different story there. And it also lets you, the veteran player, know that maybe we drop a black feather and now we know it's like, oh, there's something weird going on with Sephiroth here, but we're not seeing it. And I know we both try not to do this thing where we write the story that we wanted to have, but it's really hard because I think we have a lot on the line in terms of what we love about this original, about what we love about Final Fantasy VII that makes it feel so heavy-handed when it's done this way. And I don't know. It's just like if you took everything that happened with Sephiroth and you took it out from the game up until the point at which the director of space aeronautics sees him in the Shinra building, I'm in. I'm so in. That was such a sick scene.
Yes.
Because that's the solidification.
Nobody believes him.
He is real. He's back and nobody believes him. This is perfect. This is what this is.
That fucking asshole. I love to hate him.
Yeah. Like it's great. And I want to talk about other stuff too, but it's hard when the whole game, when you know, like everything is building to this because it's all about it's inevitably about what's different.
Yes, inevitably it is about what's different. And I do feel like the first two acts of this game from a pacing issue, it has some pacing issues. So we've already said that
100%.
But other than that, it's great. The first 2/3. The last third, it's not that it goes off the rails. It's more like I thought we were in a train going somewhere, but we're actually on a roller coaster doing loop-de-loops and doing all these crazy things. Like, this is not the ride I thought this would be. And maybe at the end of the day, I'll think that this is really cool, but I'm not sure yet. I'm sure about what right now, how I'm feeling. I'm feeling a little bit nauseous about this right now, but maybe in the future it'll be better. It's just unfortunate.
Yeah, the to your point on the pacing, and I think this has got to. I can bring it up critical reviews
if
but
you want.
What'd you say?
We can bring it up more like in depth with spoilers.
Yeah. So I think that for the pacing, part of my issue here is, and part of my frustration is that it's really, like we said earlier, mismatched with the stakes at hand in any given sequence. So the train graveyard, both that whole act, the drum with Hojo's lab.
Yeah.
It was too long. We didn't need. It was too, like, was it a cool sequence? Yeah, absolutely. Did we need to do 3 wards? No. Did we need to do light platforming, like, and puzzle solving to flip switches?
No.
Also, no. Like, why am I flipping a switch to lock a door and unlock another door if I have to proceed through it in a linear fashion?
And I love the PHS system. I love how they
I love that. I think that's cool.
That's super cool. PHS system. This is great.
We should have like split party stuff going on because that's what happens in the original game. Yeah. And I think it's a really unique facet of that game.
But it's too long.
However, it's too long. It's a little time consuming and it fucks with the stakes yet again.
I really think that this game you could bring all the good stuff that I'm going to steer the ship and talk about something that I love, but like,
Yeah, please do.
I think that this game would have been a masterpiece, 5 out of 5 stars. It was 15 hours long. Don't cut out anything.
Yeah.
Don't cut out anything. 15 to 20 hours. Have that extra 10 hours be side quests, be optional content, be, if you want, the rounds of the nights
replayable, through 2.
Make it so that the ward is choose your option. Choose ward 1, 2, or 3, and you need to choose who you want to go with to when and where, and then you replay the chapter and decide, oh, I want to go this way now, or stuff like that. I think that this was just a case of, and this is a little bit, I made sure that I did not rewatch the Tim Rogers Final Fantasy VII Remake review.
Oh, I gotta watch that now.
It's so good, and it's been years since I watched it. I forced myself not to rewatch it because I did not want to taint my thoughts with his thoughts. But I do agree with, oh God, I lost the train of thought. I think that you could have made this 15 to 20 hours. I now remember what I was going to say. I do agree with him that this was a case that I feel like the original developers needed new, fresh blood in the team to kind of be like, hey, we can let go of some of this. We can move on. I know that Final Fantasy XIII was made fun of, that it doesn't have hub worlds or side quests. It's just a corridor simulator and stuff like that. But this is not it either. This is forcing a player to do all these things, forcing all the side quests to be part of the main quest, and all these different things is not the answer either. It's okay for a game to be 15 to 20 hours. Because honestly, the original, this section is 8 hours. I definitely can see you getting 15 to 20 hours without having to add any additional content, just by storytelling.
Yes.
And the side quests being optional side quests, or maybe choose 1 out of 3 side quests, which in some parts it does that. But one of the places where they added more content that I love, and it is in an appropriate place because it doesn't fuck with the pacing, is the night mission with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge, in my opinion.
Oh, that's so awesome.
It's so good.
It just gives you more Avalanche. It gives you more Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge time. It gives you some backstory for Jesse. It feels like on brand because we're setting up for it feels on pace because we're setting up for the next big moment. And Jesse's like kind of lying about what she needs, and she's going through this psychological strife and guilt.
You meet the best character in the game that is new, Roach, my beloved.
Oh, I loved Roche. that was like the most when you were okay. I'm getting too excited now. Driving through the train tunnels on the fucking motorcycles, the dirt bikes, and then Roche comes up with the sickest motorcycle I've ever fucking seen in my life. And he's just he only exists for like Nomura to design a character. Yes. He unbelievably Organization 13 coded.
He looks straight up like oh god,
he looks almost like Axel.
He looks like Demix.
Oh yeah, Demix, yes.
He's just straight up Demix, but instead of a sitar, he's a guitar. They rhyme. No, not guitar. Motorcycle.
Yeah,
it is. And they do such a good job. And this is something that Jason messaged me like while he was playing. It was like, who's Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge? They seem to be like very important.
I remembered Biggs and Wedge. I didn't remember Jesse.
Okay, it's like, who are these? Who is Jesse? I don't remember them. Are they important in the original game? I was like, oh, they were part of the trio of Avalanche and stuff like that. And the fact that they give him so much juicy extra stuff. Biggs, I love him. Sexy Biggs character. Why isn't anybody fawning over Biggs, bro? Like, why? Biggs
It's fucked up. It's fucked up because he's so solid snake coated. He is so snake coated. From the bandana.
Yes, from an art style and combat and everything. But then you learn that he's a teacher at an orphanage and he has a soft side, and you're like, oh my God, he's dad material, guys. Why isn't anybody fawning over this character?
Yeah, no, he's husband material for sure. They're all great, and my biggest complaint with this, my biggest character complaint with Jesse, Biggs, and Wedge is that at the end of the fucking game, Jesse's still fucking dead. Why is she the only one who died? You brought Biggs back, and you didn't bring back fucking Jesse. And I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why she's dead. I already know. I don't have to. I'm asking a rhetorical question. She died because she's canonically, in my opinion, the most emotionally appropriate character for Cloud to be with. And you cannot have a third competitor outside of Aerith and Tifa.
I can see that. I think that she.
That's it.
Yeah.
My OTP, my AO3 account is going to be littered with Cloud Jesse.
Oh, not Cloud Wedge.
Well, that's
Wedge gets a lot more
account.
Which, by the way, is brought to life by what's his name in Badger from Breaking Bad. What a beautiful like voice. Like, that's exactly what I would have thought Wedge sounds like. I do think that it is a bit dumb for Wedge that he is the fat character who's always hungry. And it's like, okay, game, haha. But yeah, all the characters we mentioned.
Yeah,
new characters, they are great. Old characters, they are amazing. Red 13, super cool. You don't get to play him. I loved
Red 13.
We never mentioned why you don't get to play him, but essentially it probably was because he only appears for the last like 2 or 3 hours of the game, so they're not going to design another combat centric thing around him like it did.
It's got to be easier just to leave him as an NPC.
Which does bring me, unfortunately, to one this minor negative thing, because we do have this character that is a non-controllable AI ally. Let's talk about AI in this game.
I thought we were only going to talk about nice things for the rest of this section.
Well, I'm not going to talk about nice. I'll talk about. There is more nice things at the end of the tunnel. There are more nice things at the end of the tunnel.
I agree. I will caveat. I will just asterisk everything. I feel so critical because I care so much, and I love this game. Yes. I love this, not the original. I'm talking about this
Remake.
Game
I love Remake.
Yeah,
and
I love Remake, and I feel very critical of it.
Not in spite of the original, not because of the original. I love this game even more because of the original. But even if the original didn't exist, I think that I would still love this game. So we need to talk a little bit about, again, Kingdom Hearts Nomura. We have
the Nomura of it all.
Nomura of it all. Donald Duck and Goofy. Their AI is dumb as bricks, but you can control them a little bit to an extent. You can say, do not use items, focus on me, be aggressive, be defensive. You can do some things to like manage the AI settings on your character. Why the fuck do we not have that for our current AI buddies whenever we're not controlling them? Like, I cannot tell you the number of times I cast Arcane Ward and had friggin' Aerith frontline all the way up to the boss. It's like, bro, you're a backline spellcaster. Stay back. Like, just give me a slider of like, how close do you want me to try to be to the boss? As far away as possible, as close as possible, in the middle, or be aggressive, be defensive. They don't use items, so that's good. Or MP or anything like that. All those things you need to control yourself. I just do not understand. It feels like either it was they ran out of time and they didn't want to do that, or they did it on purpose bad so that it forces you to switch between the characters. But I personally think that that's a bad reason to force you to switch between the characters.
It's so bad. I should have brought this up in the spoiler-free section. This is such a problem in the community. Their AI, the party members' AI, is that there are multiple mods available to fix their AI behavior, to make them more aggressive, to make them do more stuff in combat that have some like additional like tools you can do to tweak it. Because I spent I think I closed the game at 39 hours.
Wow.
But I left it running for 8.
Okay.
Because what happened was I left it running overnight because I got to the Sephiroth fight at the end, and I kept wiping on it, and I was afraid of restarting all the way at the beginning of the Destiny fight, so I just left it running.
Gotcha.
So that was the lead that I buried at the beginning of the show. So all of that being said, yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. What was I saying?
We're both out of it.
That was like so traumatic.
That was so traumatic.
So
You just got
that
like flashbacks, AI flashbacks.
I played. Well, I played the game for I think 12 hours yesterday.
Oh God, I can
like
see,
10 hours.
I can
straight.
also see why that might affect your pacing issue a little bit.
I came out very frustrated to Aislinn, and she's like, "Are you mad because you're feeling pressured, or are you frustrated because there's like a pacing issue?" I'm like, it's absolutely both right now. I can emotionally recognize that it's both. The game should not be played for that long in a single session with the intent of just finishing it. But it did really point out to me the sheer padding that they do.
Yes.
And it was a train graveyard, it was Hojo's lab, and it was the end of the game wherein you're like when I had to fight that fucking arsenal as Barrett and Aerith, I wanted to uninstall the game. The game was was obnoxiously, that boss was obnoxiously difficult. It was like not like a fun mechanic to have to figure out. And it also felt wildly unnecessary because I knew that the next thing to do was to get on a motorcycle and drive. And I wanted to be on the fucking motorcycle in the really cool motorcycle scene.
Which is, I'm so happy they added more than one motorcycle scene. It's good job.
Yeah.
Good job, guys. You did it. Yeah.
I wish I
first
could
two
remember what I was
acts
gonna say before,
are
but
great.
yeah.
I think that there are pacing issues in those first two acts, but then once you hit that third act, the train graveyard, I think that's where the pacing becomes super apparent that there's an issue. Like before, I can hand wave it off. Now it's like, this is an issue. But I'll go to a positive one. To get more deep into the craziness of ATB design levers, because I love action time battles. It's so good, and I love ATB in this game, because ATBs in this game is not really an ATB as in the original. In the original, your timer filled up, you can do an action. Action can be attack or spell cast or whatever. Now you can attack whenever. So what is ATB? ATBs are cooldowns, essentially. They are essentially a new name for cooldowns, but big difference. Each ability does not have their own cooldown. Each ability has the same amount of cooldown. Or if you want to get technically speaking, some of them have twice the amount of cooldown because some of them require 2 ATB meters. So, fun.
It's like a reverse cooldown, right?
Yes, it's like a reverse cooldown because you can like save it. It's so good. I think that this is a masterstroke. Like this, like everything in the battle design, combat design, I would not be surprised if their first steps for making this game was just create the virtual battle system, which we can talk about later if we want, and they just played fights there over and over again until it was satisfying by themselves.
I hope that's what they did because it worked.
It worked. Oh my God. And the reason I wanted to bring it up was because I wanted to talk a little bit about game design, about levers in game design. Do you know what game levers are, Jason?
I don't, if it's a discrete design principle you're referencing, I don't, but I do know what levers and knobs are in regards to like designing a magic card.
That's
right?
exactly it.
Okay.
That's exactly it. That's discrete as it goes. Levers in video games are essentially attributes that certain abilities or in magic cards and stuff like that a designer can tweak to balance that thing. So, I'm going to tweak the toughness to go up. So toughness is a lever. Mana cost is a lever. MP cost is a lever. The amount of damage a sword strike does is a lever. So the more levers you have, the more complex your game is, the harder it is to balance and all these different things. That could be good in its own right. It isn't having a lot of, it isn't that the design lesson here isn't don't have too many levers. In fact, sometimes the appropriate amount of levers is a good thing. But by forcing themselves to remove this lever, they could have just as easily made it so that Braver and the Impact and Tempest and all these different things to have cooldowns and stuff like that. But no, they decided, you know what? Everything has the same cooldown. This is not a lever that we are willing to play with. we must balance everything to be around this much of a cooldown. And that's so smart because it makes the game much more cinematic and simple. I streamed this game, and friend of the show 13 has never played this game. He was watching me doing these combat battles and things, and he was like, holy shit, that looks so cinematic. That looks like it's like a cutscene that you're playing right now. And it is just, yeah, and I feel so badass. This is one of those games that makes you feel so good. So good. And I love the ATB system.
Totally. I think the ATB system is great. I think every time, like 90% of the time, the combat feels flawless, and it feels so good to be a part of it. And there's like a good balance between feeling powerful and feeling challenged. I think some bosses do it better than others. Yes. Just the only 2 tweaks I'll give it, just because I felt very frustrated. The dodge animation has no iframes. And it is such a miss because you're making a game in 2022 with a dodge mechanic that has no iframes, and that simply does not exist.
Yeah.
So you cannot, like, I was, again, probably on me, but I'm like trying to dodge roll through a boss attack like in Elden Ring or Dark Souls 3 or something, and it simply doesn't work. Like it is literally just a directional vector that you roll in, and that's all it is.
It is,
and
it is a holdover of Final Fantasy design in that, in Final Fantasy VII or in most Final Fantasy games, getting damage is part of combat. Like it does not feel bad to take damage in a turn-based combat because it's your turn to hit me. It's my turn to hit you. It's your turn to hit me. And so in this game, they kind of expected you not to, like, they expect you to dodge sometimes, but they expect you to much more often block, which does not stop damage. It just brings down the damage to like half. And the unfortunate thing is that it still feels bad. Like in that, like blocking damage and still taking damage feels a bit bad. I think that the tweak needs to be a little bit more there, where maybe certain enemies, after a certain amount of damage while blocked, it staggers you, which we haven't talked about the stagger system, which I love as well.
We haven't.
But yeah, I think that they could have done a few tweaks there with a blocking system, but I want to let you.
The other thing I want to add on is something that they brought back from like OG Final Fantasy games that I think struggles here, and I think they actually really nailed it in 16, is they brought back turn-based tactics in terms of fights. And this is, you have to hit this enemy with this ability to unlock the ability to do damage to them with regular abilities, or you have to break this body part off to do this thing to like change the way you deal damage. And there's times where that really works. The Abzu fight, this is really relevant. The if you do the optional behemoth fight, it's fucking the Omega behemoth fight is so good. Yes. It is like, to me, that fight is probably it's like the Rufus fight, the Omega behemoth fight, and part of the Sephiroth fight. I will
add one to those. Hell House.
Which
Hell
one?
House.
Hell House is an awful fight. It should be deleted from the game.
No, it's so much
I hated
fun.
that fight took.
It's so
that
much fun.
I couldn't figure it out. But to finish my thought, when it works so well. And then there's times like you're fighting. I remember it vividly. Mono drive type Bs, and it's like they like are immune to one type of damage, and there's no tell, and there's 3 of them, so they're always out of sync with each other. And targeting is a misery in this game. Targeting is your target like sometimes like lingers too long on something, especially if you swap characters. So if you're on target A and then you swap to Tifa, who's on target B, the game wants you to target A, but you're trying to target B, and then you swap back to Cloud, and you're like, okay, well now I want to pressure B because Tifa's using somersault on B, but I hit Braver and I'm targeting A, and now I'm in between them both, and I just blow Braver on dust.
I thought you were talking about targeting using spells, which is fine because
that's fine. That's fine. It's when you're doing like regular physical attacks and some of your physical abilities that like. There are some issues. Notably, this was a problem in the original Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy VII, and doesn't change. So perfect.
Nostalgia.
Par for the course.
Nostalgia achieved.
So, all that being said, I have plenty of issues with Final Fantasy 16's combat system, and I have plenty of issues with Final Fantasy 15's combat system, but I think there's a world where 15, 16, and 7 remake series come together to form the best of both worlds, which is the ATB from this game and the combat design from 16, notably, which is inspired directly from Devil May Cry, because it is the Devil May Cry combat director who designed that system. Awesome. I think it would be a great marriage, and I think we can see this direction moving forward. But to your point, I fully agree. ATB is great. The battle system is great. There's so many great fights. Hell House sucked.
No, it didn't. It's so good. Okay, at least
I want to get into
at least right before Hell House showed up. Did you get excited to see Hell House? Because you're like,
oh my God, I was fucking pumped. I was so pumped. I like said, Hell, it's here. I was so ready. I was so excited.
Because it's such a, in the original game, it's just a like random character and random encounters, and it makes absolutely no sense. So it made sense if they just removed it altogether from this game, but they found a way. They found a way to get it in. It's great.
I was so impressed that they brought it back. I liked that sequence a lot with the Coliseum. I loved what they did with Wall Market.
Is love it.
I was going to ask you for a moment to shit on Chadley, but I think I'm gonna actually.
I was about to tell you, let's bring it back down a notch and talk about the worst character in the game, Chadley. I was about to say that, dude.
I was going to. I want to get into Chadley, but I do think, Fran, that maybe we should talk about Wall Market and keep the vibes good.
Okay.
Because from what I've heard, Chadley gets way worse in the next
game. No, he comes back?
Apparently, he not only does he come back, apparently he's like on a cell phone and he's talking to you all the time and giving you like weird side quests and stuff.
Okay,
yeah, I've heard some pretty awful things about Chadley. Let's talk about it really quickly,
just so that way we have a good taste with Wall Market. Chadley is a child prodigy intern of Shinra who is, his heart is in the right place. He is fuck corpo. We love to see it.
Right.
Because what he is mechanically in the game is an opportunity for you to fight the summons that you can collect and collect those summons to like you cast them in the world. So if you don't do any of the Chadley stuff, which I did not do any of the Chadley stuff in this playthrough of Head Start, you only get Ifrit summon, and that's it. You don't get anything else.
Is that the only one? No, you can get another one.
No, well, unless I passed by it and didn't realize,
you did.
I didn't do any
in
side
the fans. It's not. It's in the when you're navigating to turn off all the lights on the plate.
We're done shitting with the pacing, so I will not talk about the fans.
Yeah. It's in like an open exploration area. It's Chocobo and Moogle.
Okay,
is all it is.
Okay, so
but that is the.
Cool idea. I love that idea of these optional bosses being the summons that you can then collect. It's kind of as like a Pokemonification of things. The problem with Chadley is that both visually and personality-wise, he is such a miss and so boring.
I don't know where he's from. I don't understand who wrote this character, and I'm sorry if you're somehow listening to this. I don't know. I mean, we all miss sometimes, man.
Yeah, we all miss.
I've written a lot of stinkers.
It's okay. Maybe an intern did it. Maybe the intern did the intern.
It's bad.
It is.
It's bad,
He looks super out of place. How we talked about in the spoiler-free section about the NPC variety. He is definitely a JoJo stand user because he is so obviously like something important.
Kind of Koichi coded.
Yeah, a little bit Koichi coded, except that Koichi grows on you. This one does not grow on you. No, this one is just. This one just.
Chadley's a problem.
And the name, why Chadley? What a name is this?
It's the only thing I can guess is that the reason his name is Chadley is because he's meant to be kind of like a doofy, stupid character. Like you cannot take this character seriously.
Yeah. Well, anyways,
especially when you run into him in Shinra, I wanted to die.
He jump scared me. I forgot that he was in Shinra, and I saw. I was like, "Oh, what the fuck are you doing here?" Like, what the? Oh Lord. He keeps like trying to like, hey, you should do this. I'm like, shut the fuck up. I don't want to talk to you. Yeah, Chadley's a problem.
Most of his materia he makes for you are trash.
Yes. I will, he's...
Assess is broken.
Assess is broken. Mechanically, good idea. They should have just had Biggs or Wedge to be the...
It really should have just been Biggs.
Yeah.
It's very Biggs.
It's very Biggs code. He's a teacher, you know. He's like, oh yeah, he teaches you about upgrading your weapons, which flashback to Nier Automata, talking about how you want to use your Buster Sword because it's the most iconic weapon. You can, in this game, use the Buster Sword all the way through because you can upgrade every weapon.
With it.
I beat Sephiroth with it too. Let's not talk about the UI, the upgrade UI. That was trash. It was a miss. It's okay. Intern, sometimes you miss.
It's okay. Everybody should have an opportunity to play with the sphere grid. That's
How
it.
dare you
That's
besmirch the name of the sphere grid? The sphere grid is
I love
peak,
the sphere grid.
And
I mean, it's very sphere grid adjacent.
That weapon upgrade thing was so shit.
You know what the biggest crime that weapon upgrade system committed was? The animation to get into it. I don't know about you. I set it to auto on every single thing and just moved on.
In Head Start, I did. But in the hard mode, I did do it manually because there is certain things that you do want to like. The auto thing is not the best, but let's do it. Hit me. I need some saccharin. I need some sugar. I need some sweetness. Give me that wall market.
Wall market. So it's I almost don't know where to start because there's so many key moments from the beginning of Final Fantasy VII that I think every fan is expecting. And I think it's Sephiroth killing the president, it's the Rufus fight, it's the bombing of the reactors, it's meeting Aerith and falling through the church, it's the Turks. Like there are key moments. I noticed I didn't say the train graveyard. Wall market, I think, is one of the highest moments of that first disc because to me, it is the moment of greatest levity. Mm-hmm. And it is the moment that Final Fantasy VII is really showing you its roots, its core, its soul of being a Final Fantasy game. It's not just edgy. It's not just cyberpunk. It is a Final Fantasy game at its heart with its quirks and its silliness and its lightheartedness and its ability to step back and make fun of its own characters. Yes. To me, the wall market segment was one of the ones that I looked forward to the most and one of the ones I was most terrified to go to. There is endless opportunity for them to fuck this up.
And they didn't, in my opinion.
And they didn't miss once.
Not once. All the freaking... the dance mini game, the squatting mini game, the Aerith being like having a relationship with Aerith and talking back and forth, even the horrible pacing issue right before it, like you as almost calling 9S 9s in this game. That is I'm talking about the high five.
The high five was great. That was the only redeeming moment of that horrible section.
Oh my god, it is the demonetizing hand massage orgasm. Oh, so good. That hand massage,
I'm willing to bet is 100% lifted from Final Fantasy X.
Oh, is it?
That's because in Final Fantasy X, you go undercover and you have to give massages to like the Jesse and James character of that game, of the villains, and Tidus and Yuffie, I think, maybe it's just Tidus. You have to give massages to these characters, and they reveal some secret to you while you're doing it because they're so relaxed. 100% has to be directly from there. Like somebody was a Final Fantasy X fan and cooked, because it's so good.
I don't know if you know this. I'm just so excited to talk about Wall Market with you. It's so good. Did you know that the Wall Market like storyline is different depending on what you did beforehand?
I was going to ask you if you knew if any of the choices you made mattered.
Yes, they do. And the reward is, drum roll please, what clothes each of the character guessed.
I fucking knew it. I fucking knew it was gonna come down to clothes, because I saw there was an achievement for getting each dress for each character.
So if I remember correctly, I believe if you do all the odd jobs with Tifa, you get the best Tifa clothing. If you do all the odd jobs with Aerith, best. I 100% agree that best, because I think the
Subjective.
second, the middle one was the better one out of the three. I will agree though, so this head start, since I did no side quests, Aerith's bad dress is shit. It's so bad. It's just like, essentially they just took off her jacket and that's her makeup. And the game does a really good job of making you feel like an asshole for not doing any odd jobs. The masseuse lady is like, "Oh, Cloud, have you ever heard of the word karma?" And you're like, and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, what goes around comes around. All I'm saying is that you get what you pay for, and don't come crying to me." And that's the last you hear from her. And then you see Aerith dressed in her shitty dress, and you're like, "Oh, you're making me feel bad."
I am looking them up, and whew, wow, yeah. Aerith has a objectively great dress. There's I forget his name on Twitter. I think he's on Blue Sky now too. His name's Derek or Philip or something. He does all these posts where he breaks down men's workwear, like men's wear, and like goes through the history of like suits and different setups and like how things have been worn and like how does this politician wear it, how does this actor wear it, and it's so informative. They're like it's like the best content on Twitter left. And I so badly want this person to do like a breakdown on Aerith, Cloud, and Tifa's dresses, because it's so interesting to me.
And yes, we did say Cloud, because obviously we all know Cloud is going to get cross-dress and it's going to be amazing. He also gets different clothing depending on the wall market odd jobs. If you do none of the wall market odd jobs, you get the plain one. If you do a lot of them, you get a really cool one. And the dance is super cool. Also, the dance is so good. Japan could have fucked this up from a like ethical standpoint, from a like
that's what I was saying. That's what I was worried about.
Oh my god, but they do, like, even the gay character, the gay coded character, he's great. I love him. He's like, they didn't do him dirty. Like, he's very stereotypical, but there's nothing I feel
that negative. Yeah. That character was a problem in the original. That character was asterisk. This game has problematic tendencies from its times. It's like watching old episodes of Friends. It was the one that I had the most trepidation with, because it's very easy to misrepresent this character. I think he's great. I think Andrea is great. And I think Cloud's treatment of being in a dress is also great. It doesn't feel as...
Yes, I'm killing it. Okay, move on.
Yeah, it's so good. It's like, it feels like he's embarrassed because he is, but it doesn't feel offensive. It doesn't feel it doesn't feel like he's punching down on anybody.
It feels like if he wasn't, even if he was in a man's fashion suit, he would feel embarrassed. He just does not feel comfortable in anything that isn't his soldier uniform. Obviously, this goes beyond that because he's also cross-dressing, but it's just embarrassment for him. I would imagine. I cannot.
So which Cloud dress did you get
for this one, for the head start?
Yeah.
You
got the black one. The simple one?
Yeah, the simple black one. Yeah, with the white bows in their hair.
Yeah.
I could imagine. I can foresee. Maybe they didn't at all. I could totally see whoever was riding Andrea watching a season of RuPaul's Drag Race and being like, okay, I think I am. And like, Andrea is such a like thinly coated RuPaul that it's great. Like, I love it.
Yeah, there is there's a lot of RuPaul in Andrea. I all the characters, like adding those characters for the Dawn, like there's I think inevitably, if you're going to keep the same plot line of Wall Market from the original with Don Corneo and the auditions and the wives, like there is a problem here.
Yes.
And I feel like it was they made it way more of a big issue in this game than they did in the original. Like they pointed out like the this is bad, this is wrong. I do think there's a lot of redemption for Madam M, Andrea, and Chocobo Sam,
which are essentially sex trafficking. If you
there's no essentialing about it, Fran. They're literally sex trafficking poor women from the slums into Don Corneo's like mansion, and then they all disappear, and then two of the characters that don't get chosen get sent off to the other like it's extremely gross. And it works out because we're all the heroes and we kill him or we beat him up and we get rid of him and blah blah blah, and like all the hero stuff happens. There's a lot of like it's weird that they brought in these three characters and then redeemed them though.
Yeah, it is very weird.
It's a problem for me. I'll be selfish. It's a big problem for me because I have a stack of Chocobo Sam trading cards from the Final Fantasy trading card game that I use as my human tokens in Magic the Gathering. And now I realize that now that I realize that he's like a human trafficker, we have an issue.
Especially him. He's the biggest asshole of the. I dislike him.
I dislike him, but they're all bad. They're all bad. They're all complicit.
I think it's just an element of even the good people of Wall Market are still in Wall Market. Like it's kind of like the mafia. Even if you're the nicest person in the mafia, you're still in the mafia. like type deal.
Yeah, Well, it's funny because when you say that, it makes me think of the Yakuza games and Like a Dragon. And those are games about being in the Yakuza, but being like a good person and building up your community and helping your community and also being the worst Yakuza member maybe ever.
Yes.
And like that's a very different twist from what we see here in Wall Market. I do think, to your point, if I were to spend some time seriously interpreting these characters, I think that their role in trafficking women to Don Corneo is reprehensible beyond a shadow of a doubt. And moreover, it's an interpretation of the complicitness in capitalism and in late stage neo-capitalism that you see in Shinra Corp and in Midgar. So that's really where I see them as a microcosm of what's going on at Shinra, is that they are all complicit in the Don's evil acts because they benefit from it, and they are placed in this position by their circumstances that were pressed upon them by capitalism. And it's kind of a microcosm of what's happening in Shinra Corp with President Shinra and the 5 directors, and notably, I forget his name, the director of
public infrastructure and
urban planning.
Urban planning, yes.
Yeah, I forget his name, new character.
No, he's not a new character,
maybe, but he's got a lot more lines.
Yes, he's got a lot more lines.
So he's a newly built character. Yes, maybe we can say. Fair.
But in all honestly, other than Heidegger and Scarlet and Hojo, the other.
So Scarlet and Heidegger are the same, right? For the most part.
Yeah.
And then the other ones are new or didn't really matter, or like newly written. But the director of urban planning's reticence to drop the plate and his inability to stop the president and Heidegger from dropping the plate, I think, is, to me, very much the implicitness and the manufactured consent that we get from capitalism, right? Yes. Is that we have a system that's flawed, that forces us and forces people into impossible situations. That's not forgiveness for his complicity, surely, but that's where I see, like,
Barrett has one of the hardest lines and talks about that exact same thing, right? About the complicity of a Shinra employee must like come to terms with the evil that they're serving. I forgot the exact words, but essentially he's saying like, yeah, even if you are like a Shinra employee that are just trying to get food on the table, at the end of the day, you're working for Shinra and you're kind of killing the planet. So, which I guess touches a little bit on something that I really wanted to talk positively. So we'll keep the train going from the terrorists, the Avalanche. So this game, in the original game, they kind of brush through the fact that you just did an act of terrorism and you just destroyed a planet, killing probably hundreds, if not thousands of people.
Destroying a reactor.
Destroying a reactor, which explodes, and there's probably workers there, and you killed people to get in there, and
It's very gray.
it's very, very gray in the original game. If not, don't look at this. Don't worry about it. They're the bad guys. Just keep moving. This game does a much better job at. There's a walking section, a prestige section right after you destroy this sector that is essentially you just walking through the streets on fire, stuff broken down, people saying my house is on fire, oh no, and all these things, coming to terms with the fact that, oh, we're actually doing terrorism here, which is why in this story I think it works how Tifa is more like, I'm not so sure about this whole situation. Like, I hate Shinra, but is terrorism the right way to go about this? And Barrett being like, hey, at the end of the day, we need to like, we're going to die. This is the only way that they will listen. We have been pushed to the edge, and this is the only way that they'll listen. And I think that they do a much better job in this game, like focusing on it, saying, hey, this is a thing. Never, ever siding. They actually don't, there's no like comeuppance for Barrett, like, oh, what you did is wrong. And there's no comeuppance for Tifa saying, hey, terrorism is good actually if you do it for the greater good. They just, this is something that is, people have chosen. This is something that is happening. You are living in it. And we are not going to comment on whether this is the right or wrong thing to do.
I loved that portion of the beginning of this game, and I think your take here is it's great. It's like very close to mine, and I like to what you said about the game being unwilling to decide what's right and what's wrong in this sense is part of the narrative dramaticism of this game, of any story like this. Like, this is not a new story, right? Like, we've seen this time and again. Like, if you're doing a bad thing for a good reason, are you a bad person? Are you a good person? Like, we can debate this for forever, or you can go watch The Good Place yourself. I don't really care. It's old, but it's still a good one, and it's a great addition here. The part that stood out to me is most interesting is Cloud and Tifa's conversation in the bar when she didn't want to blow up the second reactor. And I'm like, this is great. Like, this is Tifa. It's not the bubbly, happy-go-lucky, sweet girl that we see. It's not Cloud's friend who's like obviously in love with him, and everybody, like the bartender that everybody loves in town. It's this deeply conflicted woman who's experiencing a real ethical dilemma between her own morality as she was raised and through the experiences she's had versus with the moral reality, the ethical reality of Shinra is a planet-killing corporation, and you see it every day in front of you, and they are forcing us to live in squalor, and we have an opportunity to change it. And I wish that there was way more of that throughout this game, and it's dropped pretty basically early, right around the end of that bonus mission with Roche and Tifa and Biggs and Wedge.
Which also introduces, for a fact, that this is in the original game, Avalanche is just those 5 characters, right? Like Biggs, Wedge, Jesse, Barrett, and Tifa. In this game, we learned, Avalanche is a full-on underground organization, and this is just one of the cells. In fact, one of the maybe even extremist cells that has broken off, maybe even from Avalanche. It's still a little bit contentious as to whether are they actually part of the big Avalanche or are they not. I love that because it's like, oh my God, Avalanche is a big world. And like that's a whole nother world that we have not seen. And later on, Barrett talks about the people that they probably lost on the Sector 8 plate falling. And he's talking about, this guy, he wasn't much of a talker, but he could get you information from anywhere. And this other guy, like talking about other Avalanche characters that you don't get to meet. It really feels like you are a small part of this big organization that is around. And I thought that was a great inclusion.
I agree. Yeah. I really like that.
I think it was a great inclusion, a great idea. There is a little bit of wait a minute, there's more, and then they just brush it aside, like you said, like they never come, it never comes up again that there is more Avalanche members, and they never show up again. It's like, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I really wanted Roche to be part of an Avalanche cell, because my problem was that you have the main character JoJo syndrome of our Avalanche cell, and then the rest of them are
Mindless drones.
like generic dude with gun.
Yes.
They all have like unbelievable, like HQ has access to all of this stuff, and Wedge is like the go between because they still like Wedge. And like all that stuff was cool. I like that. I love the ad of making Avalanche bigger. Do you mind if I spoil some of Yuffie's story to you?
Yeah, sure. If it's within the first hour, I'll take it.
Yeah. So you arrive in Midgar, in just outside of Scrap Boulevard in Sector 6 or in Sector 7 as Yuffie, who is there on official Wu-Tai business of the new Wu-Tai government to steal the ultimate materia from Shinra Corp.
As Yuffie does.
And as Yuffie does. And you were given this mission from new Wu-Tai Corp, and they have conspired with Avalanche to get you into Shinra.
Oh.
So you land, you go through Shinra, you go through Scrap Boulevard, do a couple small fights, you learn how to play Yuffie. She's very cool.
That's so fucked up. That recontextualizes so much of Remake. That's amazing.
It completely changes the entire base game that Yuffie arrives as an official spy for the new Wu-Tai government, who is directly collaborating with Avalanche. And then you walk through Scrap Boulevard, you go through the gate, and people are like, where the fuck did you come from? And you're like, shut up, I'm a ninja. And you walk up to your contact, and your contact is standing right next to Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, who are going over the bombing run that they just did, and they're like debriefing on it, but they're doing it like in whispers, and you only catch it if you catch it. And then he leads you down to the basement, and there's another cell of Avalanche in Sector 7 with with your own Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse.
So just so that the listener understands, another addition to this story is the effects of propaganda on the people. And throughout the whole story, Shinra keeps saying, oh, Avalanche is working with Wu-Tai. All they're doing is they're the bad guys, because Wu-Tai in this world is kind of like another country that they've been at war with. So there's a contentious relationship between Wu-Tai and Midgar, and you hear this propaganda being over and over again. And something that I really like is that the NPC dialogues is like develops and gives you more story building. They do a really good job. And you hear the people saying, oh, could Avalanche really be working with Wu-Tai, as you walk past them, and some of them be like, I knew it. I knew Wu-Tai and Avalanche is working together. But you, as the player of Final Fantasy VII Remake, you're like, that's bullshit. That's so lies. There's no way. I know me, and we're not working with Wu-Tai. We're doing this for the planet. Oh my God, Jason, you just blew my mind.
It's so shocking. Fran, it floored me. I played for an hour, and my jaw dropped. That I do think it was like they just failed up. You know, like I don't think Shinra actually knew that. I think it was still propaganda. They were still spinning a story, and I think it's mostly just supposed to be dramatic irony that they fell up, that they failed successfully, and they got it right.
It really makes sense that Wu-Tai and Avalanche would work together, because they don't have the same goals, but whatever hurts an enemy of my enemy is my friend, essentially, right?
Right. And that totally makes sense. But what it does solidify, at least as far as this game and what Remake and Intermission, which is the Yuffie DLC, which all existed before Rebirth came out, which is presumably where you would go to. I think you would go to Wu-Tai, because I think it should be on that disc in that game. I'm not sure. I don't know. But notably, Wu-Tai in the original game, if you recall, Fran, is mostly like a post-war, mostly dilapidated, economically depressed country on the far west of the globe, and they are mostly just completely distraught and defeated from their war with Shinra, which is what happened with Sephiroth's original story, Cloud and Zack's original story, was that war with Wutai, and then it went badly for Wutai, and they lost, and they're suffering the consequences. Now, we're kind of set into a world in which Wutai seems to be like a much more active force in the world, and like another war with Wutai seems reasonable, whereas in the original game, if you told me there was another war with Wutai, I'd say it's not a war. It's just that's like you might as well be Kefka poisoning the well. Like you're just destroying them. Like you're just wiping them off the planet. It's just cleansing at this point. So it's very interesting that they took this approach.
I'm gonna have to play that immediately.
It's really shocking. It was like really shocking, especially after the side quest with Kairi. And the Angel of the Slums in the second half of the game.
You're talking about Kingdom Hearts. And I was like, bro,
she's her name's not. It's like Kairi.
Yeah,
they say
like
it weird.
That,
It's spelled Kairi. And she's literally spreading lies about Wutai's involvement with Avalanche and asking people for $5 for the news that she's delivering. And then it's like, oh my God, why? Like you're all right, but. I thought you might get a kick out of that revelation that I had, which is like, oh my God, Shinra was right. Heidegger was right all along.
God, this game does so many smart things. It does. It really. Oh my God, we have no information.
Yuffie's also fantastic. Oh, is she? Yuffie's exceptional. She's so spot on. The character is done so well. I'm so impressed.
This whole game just has so many diamonds. This isn't a case of like looking for diamonds in the rough. This is a game where most of it is diamonds with a few rough patches. And it makes it, if I could get NDA Nomura or NDA Kitase or something like that and ask them just point blank of like, hey, are those chapters that you added in between, was that like corporate mandated? Was that like the studio like putting their hands in of like, you need to be this many hours and stuff like that? Because they just feel so different from when they're actually trying to hit that I wonder.
They almost feel farmed out. Yes. They almost feel contracted.
Which actually they did have contract work on this project at one point, but that was early. Like the first half of the development on this game was contracted, and then the second half was all internal. So I would imagine that would have not been contract work. It really does feel like it wasn't the main characters. Maybe it was a case of Nomura was on Kingdom Hearts 3 and was like, I don't have time to do. Let's just add this.
I mean, there was Kitase and Toriyama co-directing it too, though.
Yeah,
like that.
So
that's.
I
or not Kitase, it was somebody else. But
it feels weird that some parts are such valleys of content, given that there is so many peaks of content.
Yeah, I don't know that I fully believe that it's just corporate. In my heart, I want that to be true, but I could also just see it's like people feel like they're cooking. I was listening to the podcast Axe of the Blood God. It's an RPG podcast with Kat Bailey and her co-hosts. And Kat Bailey said in review of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, last year's game for the Game of the Year awards that they did, that she really feels that they could have remade Final Fantasy VII the way that they want to do it with the story that they're telling in one game. And I honestly think that's true. I could see two, but I could also see one 60-hour game with DLC. And we could get the whole story.
I could also see putting like a peek behind the curtain in game development terms. Games of this nature with this, like, this is one of the prettiest games I've ever seen. Ever.
It's gorgeous. It looks great on Steam Deck. Yeah. It looks fucking great.
HDR is amazing on this. 120 frames per second HDR. Love it. It could also be a case where the monetary values of like, let's say we decide we're going to just make it 15 hours, remake and rebirth. They still might have been like, we cannot make our money back making this level of quality in the arts and animation and voice acting and all these things unless we make it 2 games. Now, that's not to say that they should have made H game 30 hours, because I don't think they should have made H game 30 hours. But I do understand the idea of we want to make it into multiple games because we want to have this like movie quality animation and art and everything for each game.
Yeah.
Like I understand where they're coming from.
I think to your point, though, if in a world with capitalism, I think they probably have to make at least 2, if not 3 games, because they have to justify. And part of charging $70 for this game is probably padding content to justify the spend.
Yeah.
Because I'm fairly certain that in 2022, correct me if I'm wrong, $70 marquee AAA games were just starting to become the norm. Like, this is a very recent trend to go from like the $50, $60 range to 70 to 100 for a game. So there was probably some justification that needed to be done. Yeah. And adding stuff like Train Graveyard probably is why, like, later makes it probably feel this way to us.
Which I will die on this hill. It's a good chapter, just not in the right place.
Oh, right. I can believe that, to be honest. And I just think that if we were in a world where money didn't matter and you just made good art, you could make this one game. But I think in a reality where you probably have thousands of developers that all need to get paid.
I mean,
and
if capitalism didn't exist, I would imagine that this would probably not even be one game. This would probably be 10 chapters where they're releasing content and churning content little by little, because it's just such a big game where it's like this for every month this year we're releasing the next chapter, just because we're like we need to continue working on it and stuff like that. Like, it's a continual thing, and maybe it goes beyond what this game does and goes into Advent Children and all that fun stuff. So
yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about making Advent Children canonical.
It is.
I don't know.
It is.
I know. Well, that takes place after 7, right? So
you're fine.
I wonder I wonder how much of that we get in the 3rd game.
I'm gonna be honest with you.
That would be where it would come up. But I wanted to ask you a question.
Yes.
So you played the game on hard, right?
Loved it.
So you talked about optional bosses.
Yes.
One of my gripes with this game, and this is more of a function of 21st century game design than it is this game's problem. One of the things that I loved about Final Fantasy VII and 6 is the RPG-ness of there's these extra areas and there's exploration and there's content there that's in the form of like extra bosses and hard areas, and there's like the Omega weapons under the water and above, and you can fight all the, and like there's all of this like sense of discovery that's really beautiful in like these OG RPGs, particularly 7 and 6 I'm thinking of. I feel like that's extremely lacking in this space, and I think it's true in 16. They do a pretty good job with it in 15, but that's an open world game, which is very different. And I think it's lacking in general game design, because right now I feel like the world is like people and designers are stuck in this on rails, third person, over the shoulder storytelling.
Yeah. And it's a hard sell to go to corporate capitalists and be like, hey, we're going to make 100 hours of content in which the player only plays 20. It's like, okay, then why not just make those 20 and that's it? You will save so much money and make so much more money. I do agree that there is a level of that. I would I would say that hard mode definitely adds enough content to make it feel that way of discovering new things, except that you need to replay everything, not just the bosses. And in hard mode, some of the places that are not bosses really do drag on, because some of the enemies that you fight in the slums or in the train graveyard or whatever don't have new exciting moves or ideas to it. They just are buffier and do more damage. Like Hell House, hard mode, he shoots out of his mouth tomberries to fight you. Brother, those and they are great. I love the tomberries in this game. They just slowly sneak up to you, and now there's this cat and mouse game of I need to switch between my characters often enough, because I might, while not looking, a tomberry might be approaching Aerith slowly, and you're like, oh.
Do they only walk up to the active character?
No, they walk up to any character, to either Aerith or Cloud, and you're like, oh,
that's awesome.
And you're sweating. So now there's like this timer almost of like, oh, I need to switch between these characters, and I need to make sure that I'm not like anywhere near these characters while I'm fighting as another character. It was frustrating. Lauren will tell you that while I was playing, I was like, getting mad and everything like that. But it's such a juicy mad. It's like what I imagine people playing Dark Souls or people playing Ninja Gaiden and the NES and stuff like that was. It's like, it's frustrating, but it's so juicy. I think Rude also, for some reason, has Tomberries now. Why? Who the fuck cares? He's got Tomberries now.
I love the Rude fight.
Yeah. Love Rude. Love that they give you a hint of Rude liking Tifa in this game. Good job. Good job, game. This game does, I think the hard mode, if you could do a boss rush, hard mode boss rush, then I'd say that, yes, definitely hard mode gives you so much extra content. It's great and everything like that. But given that you need to play the whole chapter all over again in hard mode does feel a little bit like, I don't need this right now.
Who's the optional boss at the end?
Bahamut is one of the optional bosses. It's
not just the one not just like the fused one?
The materia one.
No. I mean you fight a Bahamut in the Destiny fight.
Oh, yes. No. There is a Bahamut. You can get the Bahamut materia to summon him.
Oh, wow.
Yes, you can, but you need to defeat him first, and he's probably the hardest. That's the one I did not beat. I beat every single summon.
Is that like a VR simulator?
Yes, VR simulator. There's a lot that goes on in the VR simulators, which, hey, as somebody who loves Kingdom Hearts Colosseums, I love the VR simulator. I know that's not everybody's jam. I love the combat, I love it.
That was the one thing I wish I did more of that and less of the side quests. Yeah. I didn't do the Coliseum, and I did the Shiva and the Fat Chocobo fight. I'm going to be honest, I got the Fat Chocobo, and I was like, I'm good. I don't know what the rest of y'all are doing. I'm going kerplunk, and that's all I do.
The VR battles are good. I almost low-key, like just seeing how much additional content is and how fun it is, I low-key almost wish there was a co-op version of this where, hey, Jason, you play Cloud, I play Tifa, because I want to stagger the fuck out of enemies, and I love Tifa's stagger mechanic, and she feels so badass when she really goes fun. Super Saiyan. It's great. I love it.
Tifa and Cloud, I think, are my favorite to play, and then it's Aerith and Barrett. Yes. Barrett was probably my MVP this playthrough. He carried.
He is
He had 5,000 HP. He cast all my healing materia, all of my support materia. He ripped, and then Aerith was just full black mage, and she did a shitload of damage. I was very impressed. Also, I wanted to ask you two things because I know we're getting a little long here. One, you mentioned of the best fights. I said Omega Behemoth, and I said Sephiroth at the end, and you mentioned there was one that I didn't say. What fight?
Hell House. That's
Hell House. Oh, it wasn't any. It was. Oh, okay.
Hell House. I love Hell House.
I just couldn't. It just took me so long. It was very, very long, and I feel like I didn't figure out the tactics, so it was just a lot of chip damage.
Did you not realize that he was changing colors to tell you what elemental damage?
I did not. Okay. No, I didn't.
I can see how that could be frustrating if you don't realize that.
Yeah, I didn't see the tell. That's the only thing I'll say is that the fight system does make it so that if you're good at blocking and reading the fights, I feel like if you're an experienced Elden Ring or Dark Souls player, you'll come into this playing one of those games, and it's you could just survive in a fight for a very long time because the bosses are so telegraphed with their attacks.
Yes.
But if you don't figure out the tweak, you're going to deal 3 damage every hit, and you're going to be there for half an hour.
And that's where I guess the stagger system comes into play, since we've mentioned it so much. This has a Sekiro type thing, where in Sekiro you can get characters off balance, and that's when you can go ham on them. This game has the same thing, where instead of making all your spells and your attacks be super effective, some of the things are super effective and will deal more damage, but some things will not be super effective and deal more damage, but will actually raise their stagger meter, which they have a stagger meter on top of their, on the bottom of their life bar, which if you can get that to the end, they get staggered and off balance, and that's when you can go ham, and then you get damage multipliers, number be big, number go up. And the character that is meant to be the stagger character is Tifa, because she just hits her attack. Each attack by itself isn't that powerful, but each one of them you can bring up the stagger bar super high, super quickly. So sometimes it's just a case of switch to Tifa, stagger it up, get them off balance, switch to Cloud, go Punisher mode, and go ham on the character. And it's just like, and then go to Barret whenever Aerith dies to put a Phoenix down and use your items, because you need to use your items.
You do got to use your items in this game, that's for sure.
Which, you know what? 0 out of 10 gameplay. Hard mode doesn't let you use your items. What the fuck?
True. I used a lot of battle items in this playthrough, which I usually don't. Like, I'll use them just to use them, but they tend to scale off pretty quickly. I thought that the scaling for items in this game was actually quite good, and they did a good job making even potions feel relevant towards the end of the game.
Definitely.
I do think that I had a big issue with Gil, because it felt very obvious to me that Gil basically existed as like a go-between between me and high potions and mega potions. And that, like, there's almost no weapons to buy. There's like 3 weapons that you can actively buy.
Other ones you find them all, or steal them.
Or unlock them, but you generally don't buy them. Yeah. So, and like, materia tends to either be prohibitively expensive because it's your 3rd or 4th copy of it, or it's very, very cheap because it's your first copy. So it creates this issue of the only thing I can spend my money on are Mr. Cuddlesworth, which are bombs, and you don't need that many because you find a lot, and potions and ethers. You cannot buy turbo ethers, which is a huge issue because then you're stuck ethering between fights for 20. Maybe this is a normal mode issue, but my go-to strategy in the second half of the game was I had at least a materia of each elemental type maxed out, and I gave Cloud all of the MP and all of the magic ups that I could, and I gave him a magnify materia. Nice. And I just would Firaga or Thundaga or Blizzaga the room.
Yes.
And the fight would end. The fight just end. Like, when Hojo sends the extra team, he's like, I've planned this fight to be more than enough for you. And then I just cast Firaga and the fight falls over. I was like, okay.
Speaking of Firaga, man, they did such a good job with the spell system in this game where
it's really
fire is still just as useful as Firaga. I love that. I hate games where you essentially unlock Firaga and it's like you're never going to cast anything other than Firaga. You're never going to cast fire or Fira. They're just going to take up space in your menu. This game, the way that they do it is that Firaga takes longer to cast while fire takes shorter to cast. So if you're in a bind, if there's a lot of enemies, you might want to use fire because you can get canceled out of attacks. You can get canceled out of your spell casting.
Very frustrating experience.
Very frustrating, but I kind of feel like you need it. Like, it's
a good
such
balance.
A good balance. So the fact that Firaga takes like 5 seconds and you see the character like harnessing fire and you're like, shit, dude, do it. And then you cast it and it's like, ooh. Good job.
Yeah. Very, very well done. I love the magic system. I love the materia. I appreciated that the blue materia were so sparse, and the only one they give you extras of are warding, I think, which only is good for like turning off poison and time or turning on resistances to them, which just reduces it. So I thought the materia system was flawless. Truly, it felt like all of the good parts of the original without any of the bad parts. I loved leveling them up. I love that if you max out the pedometer materia, it turns into an AP boost materia. I thought that was genius.
I forgot what it did.
When you get 5,000 steps, it turns into a blue AP boost, and you just link it with something. I thought the item gauging and the weapon upgrades to unlock materia slots and then link them was really innovative and made me really appreciate both the weapons I had and selecting different weapons and different build outs for different fights.
Yes.
There's so much good here that I think even modern day like ARPGs does not succeed at, which is like this is actually a big problem in 16 where I want to look like Clive, and I want to look cool as fuck because he looks awesome, but like I don't want to use these other things, which is we've talked about this before. And there's so much nuance in 7 that they just knock out of the park. It's truly a wonderful game. I'm so glad we played it. I did want to ask you what you thought about Mayor Domino, but I do feel like we've gone kind of I loved that they added another character to Shinra who's pissed off at Shinra because he's like, is he the man on the inside or is he a disgruntled employee?
I like the idea. I don't think it makes it or break it. Like, he is kind of goofy, kind of campy in a time that probably shouldn't need this much camp. It's a pacing issue. I think Domino's a pacing issue where it's like if you go to Shinra Corp at the beginning of the game, like you do in the original, and you ran into Domino, like it's a lot more interesting. But as a late ad, like I wanted to love him, but he just wasn't quite there. He's definitely I agree. I could drop him, leave him, or take him. And adding Wedge there was also weird. I don't understand why he was there.
Because they just want to keep almost killing Wedge. That's all they do is almost kill Wedge.
But Jessie, no pizza for her. You die.
Yeah.
So, final verdict. Jason.
It's come to that time already,
Yeah,
Fran.
it's come.
We didn't talk about Elmira. We didn't talk about Marlene.
We didn't talk about... Oh my God, Marlene is so cute. I love Marlene.
Marlene's great. I loved Elmira. I don't know. We should end it because I could talk for probably another hour.
I could have talked about how much I hate the design of the Whispers, but you know what? We've poo-pooed this game early on too already. It's fine.
The Whispers are poorly designed. I do agree. That being said, my final verdict is, I think, pretty much the same as the original, as my original pre-spoiler verdict. I think if you're a fan of Final Fantasy VII, there's so much to love here, and I think you need to be patient with the game and with yourself because there is really bad pacing, and there's some sections that are just going to be boring, and I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it. It's a mistake. I think it's a flaw, but I think the juice is worth the squeeze. I feel like I want to tell you, dear listener, that I would sooner play through the first disc of the original game before I replay through this again. And I want that to be true, but this is a lot easier for me to pick up and play. So I might just come back to this. I am really excited to check out the next game. I don't know when. Hopefully I do it with you for the show, Fran. Maybe. But I mean, yeah, we'll do it. Maybe by then, we'll be there. And so my final verdict is it's great if you're a fan. If you're new, maybe see if you can rent it or something. I don't know if that's a thing, or play it on a friend's rig. I don't know. I think it's kind of hard. I think there's a lot to love, even if you're new, but I think there's a lot that the game is not going to help you out with.
For me, it is the big question in the room is, am I happy that I didn't get what I wanted, or am I sad of what could have been, right? Of what could have been an HD remaster of the original game. What would I choose if I was confronted by I was brought in for some reason? I was in the room with Nomura, Kitase, and it's like, hey, what would you do?
I want to be in this room with you and Nomura and Kitase. You're always in this room with them.
What would you do if I were a generous person? If I were a person that wants to give and share my love of Final Fantasy VII to the world, to everyone, I choose an HD version immediately. If I was a greedy person looking out for myself and wanting to relive my nostalgia in a new light with new story and juicy stuff and being excited about, now I don't know what's going to happen in Rebirth and in the third game because they might change the story altogether. You put that seed in my head of what if Aerith is the whole reason Aerith is doing this is because she knows that she's supposed to die, but she doesn't want to die. That's going to hit so hard and it's going to make me cry so much if that is the thing. So if that was the type of person I choose FF7 Remake over an HD remaster.
Yeah.
So, what type of person am I? I'll leave to the listeners to decide. I will not share.
Come place your bets. We'll do an over and under. We are now sponsored by Draft. No.
Oh my god. So yeah, that's where I'm at. It depends on which audience you want to hit. If you want to hit me, Remake is perfection. I love it. If you want to hit a new generation, Remake might not be it.
I think that's pretty spot on. I think I feel mostly the same. The only thing I'd add is that because 7 is so accessible, you can play it on Switch, on Steam.
And mods.
You can really get that game wherever you can game. I would, with mods, I would say you can really play. You could probably spend on a sale like $50 and get both on Steam.
I think you can get sometimes
like
FF7 goes off for like $2, bro. Like it's so cheap nowadays.
Yeah. Oh, I this is the end. I just need to tell you about it because I doubt anybody's still here. But if you are, you can enjoy it. I had so many graphical issues with Final Fantasy VII Remake.
Really? Oh, the PC port.
So,
probably, yeah.
The PC port I had. Well, yeah. So I had issues on my Steam Deck. I had issues on my PC. Number one issue: it doesn't have ultra wide support.
Yep.
So I tried to use flawless widescreen. Did not work. I installed an INI hook to edit an engine file so that I could try to force it. I did turn off dynamic resolution because it was a bit my computer's older. My CPU particularly is lagging. I think I have like a 2080 or something kind of old. So my computer was having a lot of trouble with the HDR dynamic resolution. So I turned that off. And then on Steam Deck, it was like I got it to run really flawlessly on Steam Deck, but I would say I spent an hour in a menu, at least in the options menu, which is like it sucks when you have to do that, but it's also like you game on PC sometimes. It does not happen often anymore.
Yeah,
but I mean, it definitely happens more as your computer gets older, and my rig's 7 years old now, so it's towards the end of it. I'm very scared for Civ 7 next month.
Well,
that game looks like it's gonna be $70. That game might cost $2,000. Anyway, if you're still here, we love you so much. That is our final verdict. That was Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. We are so glad that you joined us. As always, you can find us on Discord, link in the show notes below. You can find any references to any data or research Fran did in the show notes below. And you can also find links to our social media. All of Fran's are in his link tree. You can find links to anything for the show in our link tree. And you can find me or him on either like Instagram or Blue Sky is best or Discord is our favorite.
Yeah. I'm so happy that I got to, once we played our first game, Final Fantasy, I always knew that I wanted to come back to Final Fantasy VII Remake because I knew it's going to be juicy. It's going to be fun.
This was great. Like this was such a great anniversary game for us. I'm so glad we did it. And if the podcast ended tomorrow, I'm very glad we got here.
Yes,
it feels very poetic, especially as we get into 2025 and we're going to start doing a little bit more of our own games that we wanted to play together, particularly. And we reach out to our small but budding community to find out what we're going to play in 2025. So I'm very glad that we got to do this for a year together so far, and I look forward to at least another. So with that, as always, you can reach us in the places that you can reach us, and you can't where you won't. And with that, I recommend that everybody go out, save the girl, save the guy, most importantly, save the lab rat dog, and do not forget, use your items.